Chapter 1588. Chu Yang received the Ice Kuan's warning. After saying a few meaningless words, he left immediately and disappeared without a trace. No one could locate him, let alone know where he had gone. As for following him, there was no need to mention it. Some people might have the guts, but no one had the ability to do so. Kuan, who is it? Chu Yang asked as soon as he saw the Ice Kuan face to face. The son of the absolute beginning. Chu Yang was surprised by the answer. Of course, he already knew about the son of the absolute beginning. He had heard about it from the dozen people he had interrogated earlier. Is the son of the absolute beginning very powerful? The Ice Kuan knew what Chu Yang meant and said, very powerful. The son of the absolute beginning is involved in the elements of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, light, darkness, space, and time. If you are the first to condense the strongest godhead in history, then the son of the absolute beginning is the second. After a pause, the Ice Kuan continued, in fact, the absolute beginning tribe has always had such an idea, but they have never succeeded. Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat. He knew how difficult it was to condense the godhead using the 11 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, and so on. The absolute beginning clan should be relying on absolute beginning aura, right? Yes. The Ice Kuan nodded and said, the absolute beginning tribe occupies the starting ground, so they have more absolute beginning chi than others. So, even I am not a match for the son of the absolute beginning? Chu Yang narrowed his eyes. A divine item like the absolute beginning energy was indeed too astonishing. The son of the absolute beginning would certainly be incomparably powerful. That may not be the case. The Ice Kuan was relieved. No matter how extraordinary the son of the absolute beginning was, he would not be a match for its master at the same level. How heaven-defying was its master? Chu Yang was full of fighting spirit. He had learned a lot from the battle with Hua Wushuang. I want to meet this so-called son of the absolute beginning. Master, don't be anxious. Bing Kuan hurriedly said, the Grand Primordium Dominator must want to use you as a whetstone for the son of Grand Primordium. If you defeat the son of Grand Primordium now, you will be worthless. Then, the Taichu tribe will attack you with all their might. It's not worth it. Chu Yang immediately understood what the Ice Kuan meant. If that was the case, it would be extremely difficult for him to enter the starting ground and obtain the initial aura. He would have no choice but to flee back to the heavenly soul realm, wasting all his previous efforts. Then, after I get the primordial aura, I'll play a big one and put an end to this trip to the god's realm. After making his decision, he said, Kuan, let's find a place for me to digest and summarize. After that, we'll head to Origin Province immediately. Master, come with me, playing big. When Bing Kuan was leading the way, his heart was in turmoil. He didn't know what Chu Yang was going to do. Furthermore, the scale of this challenge was far greater than it had ever imagined. Perhaps it was even more shocking than provoking the sovereign. Otherwise, as its master, he would never be satisfied. After Chu Yang left the place where he and Hua Wushuang fought, the crowd didn't disperse immediately. People gathered in one place, discussing spiritedly in groups of 2s and 3s, consuming the shock and disbelief of today. In the end, Hua Wushuang was actually killed by Chu's Walla. I didn't expect this even in my dreams. After all, how strong is Hua Wushuang? Isn't that so? What kind of status does Fazi of the Flame Sect have? He's someone who will become the sect leader of the Flame Sect in the future. But today, he was completely crushed and humiliated to the extreme. Immediately, someone echoed, whenever I think of Chu's Walla's words, what are you showing off for? I feel ashamed for Hua Wushuang. One can't be too arrogant. He's so arrogant, but in the end, he's going to humiliate himself. As the old saying goes, there's always someone better than you. No matter how strong you are, take Hua Wushuang for example. He wasn't a god's chosen, but he was still stronger than a god's chosen. He even created his own fire elemental general principles. That's not the most shocking thing. Think about it, that Chu's Walla actually killed the Flame Sect Overlord's projection. Doesn't this mean that when he grows up, he'll be able to kill overlords like killing chickens? Rumble. Chapter 1589. This aura was extremely frightening, and it instantly caused the noisy crowd to die down. The surroundings were silent, and everyone couldn't help but look into the distance. Everyone knew very well that an incomparably powerful person was coming. This person was definitely coming for Chu Zhuoyue. Unfortunately, Chu Zhuoyue had already left, and no one knew where he went. Otherwise, this would be another earth-shattering battle. However, when everyone looked into the sky, they didn't see any figure at all, but the rumbling thunder was getting louder and louder. That vast aura was also becoming more and more shocking. In just a short moment, they saw a black dot on the horizon, and then, as if the night had passed and the first light appeared, a gentle light suddenly burst out and fell into everyone's eyes. That light seemed to be the light that cut through the eternal darkness, and also seemed to be the first light that bloomed in the world. The Sun of Absolute Beginning, it's the Sun of Absolute Beginning. The Sun of Absolute Beginning is here. Rumor has it that the Sun of Absolute Beginning is coming to deal with Chu Zhuoyue. It seems that this matter isn't fabricated. Chu Zhuoyue is extremely daring. The Absolute Beginning ruler can't attack a junior, so naturally, the Sun of Absolute Beginning has to deal with him. This is really a dragon against a dragon, a tiger against a tiger. If the two of them fight, I'm afraid it'll be even more intense than before. Exclamations were endless. People only saw that light and concluded that it was the Sun of Absolute Beginning, because only the Sun of Absolute Beginning would have such an aura and such a light on his body. The Yuan province was adjacent to the Yuan province, and the Sun of Absolute Beginning had long been well known in the Yuan province. They were well aware of his fame and knew that he was boundlessly terrifying. If compared to Hua Wushuang was probably inferior to the Sun of Absolute Beginning. In just a short while, the person who came could be vaguely seen. He had a head of beautiful long hair, and a pair of wings on his back that were at least dozens of feet long. One was black and the other was white, and they seemed to be light and darkness, as well as yin and yang qi circulating around them. Rumble. Amidst the loud rumbling, the world was trembling, and the blood of many people present was surging. In the distance, the person who was flying over was approaching at an extremely fast speed. His speed was simply too terrifying, seemingly faster than light. Everyone present couldn't believe that he had arrived in front of them in the blink of an eye from so far away. Boom! The void trembled, and the dazzling figure stopped in midair. The whole world shook even more violently. The person who came was like a huge monster, standing in midair like a star, like the starry sky. The aura that surged out of him made people want to kneel down and kowtow. Many people had their eyes wide open. They were waiting to see what the Sun of Absolute Beginning looked like. However, they couldn't see his face at all. The light was too dazzling, and he was shrouded in a dense mist, making him look extremely mysterious. The only thing that could be seen clearly was that pair of incomparably deep eyes. The scene inside was astonishing. The deepest part was pitch black, like the darkness of the universe. A ray of light burst out from there, followed by the aura of primal chaos, as if the world was being created. In his eyes, the most superficial part was the stars, the sun and the moon. The sun, the moon, and the stars seemed to be moving in his eyes. He was like the birth of a true dragon. As soon as he appeared, he made people feel earth-shattering and their souls shivered. This was the Sun of Absolute Beginning. Where is he? As soon as the Sun of Absolute Beginning arrived, his divine instinct swept out in all directions like a rising tide. However, he didn't find his target, so he immediately asked. Chapter 1590. Compared to Hua Wushuang, he was much better. Young master, Chu Zhuoyue just left, but I didn't have the ability to catch up with him. He's too fast. In the crowd, as soon as a silver-haired man spoke, the people around him retreated like a tide, making him stand out. The Sun of the Absolute Beginning was prepared, and everyone was surprised. The silver-haired man pointed in the direction where Chu Yang had left and said, "He escaped from this direction in the end. He seems to have returned to the beast abyss." The answer he gave shouldn't be satisfactory, but there was no fear. "You did well. Don't do things that you can't do. Remember," the Sun of the Absolute Beginning said calmly. "Yes, young master." The silver-haired man nodded. After that, The son of the absolute beginning closed his eyes again in the air, silently sensing the surroundings. He tried to capture Chu Yang's aura and reconstruct what had just happened here. Suddenly, a divine aura gushed out from his body like a divine king. A gentle pressure accurately scanned the place where Chu Yang and Hua Wushuang had fought. Although the pressure was gentle, it still made people's hearts throb. I felt Hua Wushuang's aura. What happened just now? Tell me roughly, the son of the absolute beginning said. After a while, the son of absolute beginning spoke. His voice was even calmer. He did not feel any displeasure because he had lost track of Chuzwala. Young master, the silver-haired man said, Chuzwala challenged everyone and defeated countless opponents. Those who were stacked into piles were all people who were defeated by him with just a raise of his hand. You don't have to say that. Just tell me about Hua Wushuang. Yes, young master, the silver-haired man said, in the great battle between Hua Wushuang and Chuzwala, Hua Wushuang used fire magic to fight against Chuzwala's thunder magic. I can't comment on their understanding of magic and Tao, but it seems that Chuzwala is superior. Stronger than Hua Wushuang? The son of the absolute beginning was a little surprised. Young master, I feel that way. The silver-haired man added, in addition, Hua Wushuang summoned his own godhead to summon the flame worship sovereign's imprint in heaven and earth, forming the projection of the flame worship sovereign. However, it was still destroyed by Chuzwala's lightning arts. The son of absolute beginning was surprised. He squinted and said, so, Hua Wushuang was thoroughly defeated. Very thorough. The silver-haired man said, Chuzwala used Hua Wushuang as a whetstone to practice. After Hua Wushuang unleashed all of his fire skills, he still wasn't satisfied. In his fury, he killed Hua Wushuang in an instant, seized his godhead, and left. As he spoke, he directly transmitted the indescribable scene to the son of absolute beginning through his spirit, causing the son of absolute beginning's pupils to shrink. He immediately cried out in surprise, no wonder Chuzwala dares to provoke the ancestor. He is indeed extraordinary. Even the son of absolute beginning had to admit that Chuzwala was extraordinary. Everyone was a little surprised. Then, they felt that the son of absolute beginning was certainly not an ordinary person. Only those who were confident in themselves could face their opponents head-on and admit that their opponents were strong. This would not show the son of absolute beginning's weakness. Instead, it would make people feel his strength and charm. Only those who were strong could do this. On the other hand, Hua Wushuang seemed to be much weaker. He had shown off at the beginning and was slapped in the face by Chuzwala. If it had been the son of absolute beginning, such a situation would never have happened. Everyone was different after all. Among the heavens' prides, the son of absolute beginning was more terrifying and more in line with people's praise. At this moment, everyone believed that the son of absolute beginning was destined to dominate the ups and downs of the divine world in the future. He would look down on his peers and shock the past and present. The sin beast is mine. Whoever dares to snatch it from me, I will not spare them. Chapter 1591. As soon as she appeared, her devastatingly beautiful appearance stunned everyone. Her fierce appearance at the moment made people feel that she was extremely cute, as if they had seen their own unruly little sister. There were two old women behind her. They were frighteningly old and looked like two dead people behind her. Although there was no powerful aura, it made people's hair stand on end. Who else could it be but Little Moon Goddess? Little Moon Goddess had used the Moon Goddess summoning technique to get rid of Chu Yang. After returning to the Moon God Palace, she immediately used a divine pill to recover her vitality. After recovering to the peak, she rushed over in a hurry. Little Moon Goddess, it's Little Moon Goddess. Little Moon Goddess is here too. She really suffered a great loss at Chuzwala's hands. What else could it be? She can't bite people now. But her coquettish appearance is really alluring. She's really more beautiful than a beautiful face. The group of animals was amazed and completely forgot the main point. Miss Moon, long time no see. Son of the absolute beginning, cut the crap. Little Moon Goddess said coquettishly. I said that the sin beast is mine. You don't have any objections, do you? The son of the absolute beginning frowned. I'm afraid I can't comply. Chuzwala provoked my ancestor. He can't be forgiven. As he spoke, he cupped his fists at Little Moon Goddess. I'm sorry, Miss Moon. If it were anything else, it would be fine, but not Choosewalla. The son of the absolute beginning stated his reasons. Little Moon Goddess stared at him and stated her reasons for being extremely powerful and moving. She pointed at her perky nose and said, "That bastard pulled my nose and wanted to turn it into an elephant's nose. He also pulled my face and rubbed it like a ball of dough. He even spanked my butt." The more she spoke, the angrier she became. Her beautiful eyes widened. "I have more reasons than you. If you're still not convinced, then the two of us can fight. The sin beast belongs to whoever wins. How about it?" This girl was too battle-hungry. As soon as she finished speaking, her fighting spirit soared. She was like a burning flame. He looked like he could not help but want to make a move immediately. He was clearly impatient. The son of the absolute beginning's mouth twitched. He had heard about the Little Moon Goddess a long time ago, and he knew what kind of person she was. Why would he fight with her? "Lady Yu, let's rely on our own abilities. If you find Choosewalla first, I have nothing to say. Everything is up to you." After he finished speaking, he immediately left like a beam of light. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. It was as if he was running away. "Chimph, are you a man?" The Little Moon Deity was displeased. She snorted and said, "You don't even dare to fight me. I look down on men like you." Everyone was speechless at the sight of the Little Moon Goddess. "Sin beast, come out and fight." She threw the son of absolute beginning aside and screamed, "I'm going to smash you, pull your nose, rub your face, and spank your butt." There was no response. She shouted even more fiercely, "My mount, are you afraid?" If there was no problem with this sentence, then there was a problem with the next sentence. "You coward, if I lose to you again, I'll be your mount and let you ride me." Many animals had evil thoughts. When they heard this, their expressions immediately became very interesting. Their gazes became very strange, and their mouths were wide open. The Little Moon Goddess sensed this strangeness and immediately remembered Chu Yang's strange expression. She was puzzled and immediately asked, "Why are you looking at me like that? Why are your eyes so obedient?" "No. Nothing." The person who was stared at by the Little Moon Goddess immediately stuttered. "Are you going to say it or not? Is there really nothing? Only a fool would say it." He would not say it even if he was beaten to death. If he said it, he would be beaten to death. In the end, the two old women behind the Little Moon Goddess could not stand it anymore and sent her a voice transmission. "Ah!" In an instant, an ear-piercing scream resounded through the world, piercing through everything. Chapter 1592. Archu. Finding a quiet place to rest, Chu Yang, who had calmed down, sneezed. He didn't have time to appreciate the details of the battle, and felt a chill on his back. He couldn't help muttering to himself, "Is that thing thinking about me? It seems to be very powerful." After joking around, he took out Hua Wushuang's godhead. The godhead was rhombus-shaped, sparkling like a fire diamond, and inside it was a sea of flames. Just by looking at it, Huang Xiaolong felt like a flame would burst out and burn him. Chu Yang didn't immediately sense the godhead to comprehend Hua Wushuang's law of fire. Instead, he closed his eyes and focused on the battle today, especially the details of his battle with Hua Wushuang. Of course, when he fought with others, he also had some insights, but they didn't seem very important. However, to him, every little bit of insight was extremely precious. Chu Yang was like a muddy pool of water, slowly settling down. Very soon, the chaotic feeling disappeared, and he became incomparably calm. His thoughts became extremely active, and everything became clearer. However, it became incomparably orderly. Finally, he recalled every detail of his battle with Hua Wushuang. On one hand, he was reflecting on himself, digging out his shortcomings. On the other hand, he was also experiencing Hua Wushuang's various methods. Using himself as a reference, and through analysis, Chu Yang's understanding of Hua Wushuang's law of fire was not only sorted out, but also deepened his comprehension. Hua Wushuang's law of fire turning into law of water isn't the same as the yin and yang transformation, but similar to the lightning law's general principle, lightning acts as the 5 elements. Lightning could act as the 5 elements, could it be that fire could act as well? Chuyang fell into contemplation. Fire belonged to one of the 5 elements, and through the 5 elements' mutual promotion, fire energy could be transformed into earth energy, metal energy, water energy, and wood energy. Fire gave birth to earth energy, and it was easy to transform it into earth energy, but to transform it into metal energy, it required 2 steps. Transforming water energy required 3 steps, and wood energy required 4 steps. Therefore, according to Hua Wushuang's idea, fire energy could be directly transformed into water energy without going through yin and yang, and there were no other steps in between, which would conflict with the 5 elements' mutual promotion. In other words, if Hua Wushuang's fire principle was successfully created, then the 5 elements would be completely overturned by him. Hua Wushuang should know about this. He should also be planning to subvert the 5 elements, right? Only then would it be shocking enough. Chuyang was shocked. In his previous life, the old science and ideas would be overturned and replaced by new science and ideas. In other words, old science and old ideas could only be established in a limited area. They were not applicable in new areas at all. That was what Hua Wushuang wanted to do. In the end, Chuyang couldn't help but exclaim, "The rolling river of time is unstoppable." Hua Wushuang wants to be the driving force of this era, and even more, he wants to push this era forward. He is truly bold and ambitious. This was definitely something that Chuyang could learn from. Every era had its own creators and promoters. Hua Wushuang was the pioneer of an era, opening up a brand new chapter. He stood at the forefront of the trend of the era and branded his own glorious mark. Therefore, Chuyang could not help but admire him. To be more precise, he felt that Hua Wushuang was walking in front of him, leaving him far behind. Chuyang had a feeling that time was not waiting for him, and a sense of nervousness was brought about by his opponent. Chapter 1593. Who? Chuyang let out a long breath, thinking, it's important to have a good opponent. I've always heard people say that it's hard to find a good friend. This saying is true. Then, he began to study Hua Wushuang's Godhead. The Godhead was the conclusion of Hua Wushuang's arts, the condensation of his Tao. To understand Hua Wushuang's Tao of fire, one had to understand the fire worship sect. Hua Wushuang was a disciple of the fire worship sect. He must have worshipped fire, which was why he came up with the idea of creating the general principles of fire. Every civilization worshipped fire. Needless to say, in the God's world, it was undoubtedly the fire worship sect. The fire worship sect believed that the fire overlord was the truth, the only one, the light, the law of heaven, order, and the truth, the origin of everything. He created the world and humans, and he first created fire because fire was the infinite light. Fire drove away darkness, extinguishing evil, only then would there be infinite light. In the fire worship sect, there were 7 stages of creation: fire, sky, water, earth, plants, animals, humans. Chuyang looked at the Godhead as if he was looking at the structure of Hua Wushuang's thoughts. He already understood how Hua Wushuang was able to do all this. Hua Wushuang's understanding of the world was different from many people in the God's world. Most people believed that with the existence of heaven and earth, there would be elements and living beings. But Hua Wushuang believed that with fire, there would be other things. Different thoughts led to different perspectives of understanding, which allowed one to do things that others didn't expect. Chuyang borrowed Hua Wushuang's fire arts, but he didn't fully accept it. Up until now, Hua Wushuang was correct, but it didn't mean he would be correct in the future. Walking down this path to the end could lead to a dead end. Therefore, Chuyang was also thinking on his own. He also had a different way of thinking compared to the people of the heavenly soul realm and the God's realm. He also had a different perspective. In his previous life, the appearance of fire was the symbol of civilization. Without fire, humans wouldn't have progressed, and their wisdom wouldn't have developed. Everything originated from fire. Chuyang agreed with Hua Wushuang on this point to a certain extent. The reason for this was because of the sun. Without the heat of this star, the airflow would not have been formed, and natural phenomena such as wind, clouds, thunder, and lightning would not have been formed. Life would not have been born, and humans would not have been born. Therefore, to humans, fire was indeed the source of all living things. As he pondered deeply, Chu Yang gained a deeper understanding of fire and the true essence of fire. His understanding of fire reached a whole new level. Fire was not simply about burning and destroying. To humans, it also represented the origin of civilization. Civilization. The law of fire was definitely Chu Yang's unique law of fire. The foundation of his fire arts was also on this point. Then, all kinds of flames appeared one after another, fireflies in the night, burning bonfires, fire dragons, fire phoenixes, fire horses, fire bulls, stars in the universe, and so on. Many forms of flames appeared. The world of his consciousness instantly turned into a world of fire. At this moment, if he were to compete with Hua Wushuang's flames again, he would also have thousands of flames rushing out. Karmic fire, the fire of Buddhism, finally emerged in Chu Yang's mind. However, he wasn't just thinking about karmic fire. Buddhism had many kinds of fire. There was the fire of Dipankara. Shakyamuni Buddha once worshipped Dipankara. The meaning of Dipankara was to light a lamp to illuminate 3 worlds. There was the true Samadhi fire, which drove away the darkness in the heart and body. Chu Yang's understanding of Buddhism was deeper than Hua Wushuang's. His understanding of fire techniques was also not far behind. It was not difficult for him to convert the power of fire into the power of water. In fact, he easily accomplished it. Chapter 1594. Water. Rumbling sounds came from Chu Yang's body. It was as if a flood was about to reach the heavens. Then, his body was like a dam, gushing out like a torrential flood. Without water, the existence of fire in this world would have less meaning. Cooking requires water, bathing requires water, irrigation requires water. Water is the source of life. Only with life can there be civilization. Thus, water is also civilization. The various interpretations and mysteries of water were reorganized in Chu Yang's consciousness. It was no longer based on the Ice Kuan and Kong Kwang's Tao of water, but solely on him. He had finally walked his own path on the Tao of water, forming his own unique Tao of water. Just like the Tao of fire, his Tao of water would also be different. Water nourishes and nurtures life. Humans are closely related to water. 70% of the human body is water. For example, Chu Yang believed that apart from himself, there was no one else in the heavenly spirit world or the myriad God world who could achieve this. Because of this, he could adjust the structure of his body through the law of water to the extreme. He believed that his physique would undergo a great change and his strength would soar. He only had 150,000 dragon power now. After breaking through to the nascent divinity realm, his physical body had not improved. This was the result of him deliberately suppressing it. He planned to break through to the soul fusion realm after returning to the heavenly spirit world. Unknowingly, Chu Yang had begun to adjust his body through the law of water. The results were immediately displayed. 160,000 dragon power, 170,000 dragon power, 180,000 dragon power. The increase in strength was astonishing. In the end, his physical strength increased to 200,000 dragon power. At this point, his comprehension of the law of water had reached the pinnacle of the transformation of his physical body. His entire body was like a transparent crystal, emitting a gentle luster. Going too far was as bad as not going far enough. Extreme but not perfect. Chu Yang no longer pursued strength. Once again, he adjusted his body. His crystal body turned back to his original physical body, but his strength decreased by 20,000 dragon power. If water can adjust the structure of the body, then so can fire, and so can lightning. Peng. Water turned to fire, blazing flames burst out from his body. At his peak, his body was like Hua Wushuang's godhead, sparkling and translucent like a fiery diamond. His physical strength had risen to 23 dragons' strength. From the extreme state to the perfect state, his strength had decreased by 20,000 dragons' power, and his body now had 210,000 dragons' power. Zhao Fu used the lightning technique to adjust his body. Because his comprehension of the lightning technique was the deepest, he was able to increase his strength by more than 10,000 dragons' power. In the end, His physical strength stopped at 250,000 dragon power. His comprehension of the laws of wood, earth, light, darkness, and wind was not enough to adjust his physical body. Chu Yang continued to comprehend and cultivate. After an entire day passed, his mastery of the Tao of Fire advanced by leaps and bounds, almost reaching the same level as his mastery of the Tao of Water. When he opened his eyes, half of his pupils were like crystals and the other half were like fire diamonds. His gaze was also like half water and half fire. Disperse. He raised his hand and tapped Hua Wushuang's godhead, causing it to buzz. The godhead spun at high speed in the air, blossoming with rainbow lights. Soon after, with a light cracking sound, the invincible godhead was disintegrated in an instant. Strands of the law of fire flew out and floated in the air like strands of straw. With a peng sound, rolling flames surged out from the law of fire, sweeping through the void and soaring into the sky. Such a huge commotion alarmed the Ice Kuan. When it saw such a scene, it was stunned and almost turned to stone. It could kill a person, but not a godhead. Chapter 1595. The more it thought about it, the more it broke out in cold sweat. Chu Yang had mastered the method of breaking down godhoods. This would bring about a great disaster. Putting aside the fact that Chu Yang could threaten everyone in the divine world, just the fact that the godhoods could be broken down would cause the divine world's martial arts system to collapse, and the consequences would be catastrophic. The godhoods were extremely important nodes in the divine world's martial arts system. Once the nodes collapsed, it would be unimaginable. Divine punishment. Ruler. The Ice Kuan was terrified. Chu Yang had destroyed the divine world's martial arts system, which was equivalent to breaking the rules of the entire divine world. Such a huge matter would definitely be noticed by the heavenly axiom and cause a change in the world. The ruler would also be informed immediately. The heavenly axiom would not tolerate it. The ruler would not allow Chu Yang to exist, let alone leak such a secret. Oh my God! It was already wailing in its heart. Chu Yang was simply courting death. Did he not know the consequences of doing this? However, strangely, none of this happened. The Ice Kuan was stunned. What was going on? Gather. Chu Yang's thoughts moved, and the rules regrouped. In an instant, the godhoods were formed again. However, the godhoods that were formed were no longer rhomboid, but a spherical fire diamond that shone brightly. He dispersed the godhoods with a thought, and then gathered them again with a thought. The Ice Kuan was stupefied. Then, it recovered and became stupefied again. After a while, it trembled and said, "Master, what did you do? Do you know what you are doing?" Chu Yang looked at it in confusion and said, "I understood Hua Wushuang's godhood, but I was just trying to break it down." Just that. The Ice Kuan could not accept it. "Master, after obtaining a godhood, everyone can thoroughly understand another person's godhood, but no one can break it down. Hua Wushuang's godhood has a fatal flaw." As Chu Yang explained, he rubbed his chin and pondered while saying, "I think this should also be the reason why Hua Wushuang intentionally created two fire clones. He himself is extremely clear about the flaws in them. So that's how it is, phew. Take it as an example." The Ice Kuan let out a long sigh of relief. It was no wonder that the heavenly changes and the wrath of the sovereign didn't happen. However, this master of his was still incomparably astonishing. After breaking down the godhead, he could actually reassemble it with a single thought. This was simply terrifying. Reforming one's godhead was equivalent to condensing one's godhead. No one could condense one's godhead so quickly. "Master, you were in danger just now. Do you know that?" Finally, the Ice Kuan told her what he was worried about. As soon as it said that, Chu Yang immediately broke out in a cold sweat. Chu Yang did indeed have the ability to break down other people's godheads. If he succeeded, it would definitely be a great trump card in battle. However, he did not notice anything else. After that, he thought about it again and felt that it shouldn't be so serious. The Ice Kuan was a little worried and scared himself. Even if the godhood could be easily broken down, it definitely couldn't shake the foundation of the god's world. After all, you have a good plan, and I have a way to get through the wall eventually. There would be a way to make up for it. This was like a system with a loophole that could be patched. However, Chu Yang didn't say that. He ended this time's cultivation and said with a smile, "Kuan Kuan, let's set off. New excitement awaits us in the God's world. Let's open a new chapter, starting ground. Grandpa Chu is coming. Chu Yang must go to the starting ground. He must also obtain the Chi of beginnings." Chapter 1596. The sun shone brightly and the sky was incomparably blue. From Abyss City to Origin Province, the scenery along the way was extremely beautiful. The lush greenery along the way was filled with boundless vitality, making Chu Yang feel refreshed. Recently, he had been constantly fighting with others, and even fought until the sky was dark. It was rare for him to be able to calm down and breathe freely, allowing the world spirit Chi to nourish his body and relax his entire body. Chu Yang had changed his appearance, so no one paid attention to him along the way. However, he discovered that there were many astonishing auras heading from Origin Province to Abyss Province. If he wasn't wrong, these people should all be looking for trouble with him. Unfortunately, you're all in vain. Grandpa Chu has already arrived at Origin Province. Hehe, you didn't expect me to be so bold, did you? Chu Yang laughed proudly in his heart. He clearly knew that the absolute primordium ruler was in Origin Province. After provoking him, he still dared to hang around under the absolute primordium ruler's nose. He felt that he was the number one person in the world. The center of Origin Province was Origin City, and the starting ground was also here. Chu Yang headed straight for Origin City. As soon as he entered a restaurant, intending to fill his stomach, he immediately heard a clamor of discussion. The starting ground is opening again. I wonder who will be the one to show off this time? Chu Yang had not sat down for long when he found out the reason for such intense discussion. It was all because the starting ground was about to open. Inside the restaurant, many people were talking about this. They were looking forward to the starting ground this time. Every time the starting ground opened, it was a major event for Origin Province. The strongest successors of various sects and clans would all come and clash at the starting ground, creating the most dazzling sparks. The starting ground could be said to be a gathering of hundreds of rivers, a gathering of heroes, and geniuses contending for supremacy. Countless young experts would emerge and engage in decisive battles there. Hence, even the ordinary people were very enthusiastic and incomparably attentive. Information about the starting ground was exactly what Chu Yang needed, so he couldn't help but listen attentively. Why do I feel that the opening of the starting ground this time is a little different from before? It's really strange. Why do I keep thinking that this time will be a world-shaking one? You mean that Chuzwala who provoked the absolute primordial ruler? It seems to be because of him. Haha. In the restaurant, the crowd could not help but burst into laughter as they mocked. Just how bold does Chuzwala have to be to come to our Genesis province after provoking a ruler, and even appear right under the ruler's nose? That's right. He still wants to enter the starting ground. Isn't that just a dream? The man was unconvinced and retorted, what's so impossible about that? Chuzwala doesn't have much courage. Does he dare to provoke a ruler? If he has that kind of courage, why doesn't he dare to come? Why doesn't he dare to enter the starting ground? Suddenly, the restaurant became quiet. Everyone's mocking laughter disappeared, and the direction of the wind changed. It was amazing. That's right. This Chuzwala isn't an ordinary person. How can we guess what he thinks? I heard that this Chuzwala is incomparably astonishing. He defeated all his enemies in the Abyss State, and even Hua Wushuang was defeated by the Sect of Flames method. Not only Hua Wushuang, Little Moon Goddess was also defeated by him. Unfortunately, by the time the primordial sun arrived, that Chuzwala had already left. Otherwise, there would have been another world-shaking battle. At the mention of the primordial sun, the focus of everyone's discussion shifted to him. Do you think the primordial sun can defeat that Chuzwala? Is there even a need to ask? The last time at the starting ground, the primordial sun won in the end and became the most dazzling one. That was the battle that made the primordial sun famous. He suppressed many heavens' prides, and not many people could compete with him. Chu Yang was shocked when he heard this. In a place like the starting ground, There were countless heaven's prides and young supremes. It was simply too extraordinary for the primordial sun to win in the end. Chapter 1597. The Genesis child was not only the pride of the Genesis tribe, but also the pride of the entire source state. His talent was peerless, and he looked down on the other neighboring states. It's said that the Genesis child obtained the Genesis light, which can evolve into anything. It's extremely shocking. This is also what many peerless geniuses want to know and confirm. Does he really have the Genesis light? So what if it's confirmed? I heard that the Genesis child is planning to condense the strongest divine spark in history, gathering all kinds of elements in the world. If he succeeds, he'll set a shocking record and establish a new record in the divine world. As for the Genesis ground, it'll be even more unimaginable. Chu Yang frowned. The atmosphere in the restaurant made him feel the fierceness and cruelty of the competition. It was far more desperate than he had imagined. The Genesis chi was too rare and its effect was too great. It was definitely not something that only he desired. Good news. The Genesis tribe has discussed with various sects and clans, and they've already made a decision to enter the Genesis ground. A total of 3,000 people will enter, someone shouted outside the restaurant. Immediately, there was an uproar both inside and outside the restaurant. Many people didn't dare to believe it because compared to before, this was too much. It was far beyond their expectations, and it made them dumbfounded. Chu Yang didn't need to think to know that the competition for the quota was fierce. It would definitely be the turn of the ordinary people after the various major forces had divided it. As for adding so many new quotas and letting so many ordinary people in, with his black-bellied personality, he probably didn't have any good intentions. After all, who would be willing to share the Genesis chi with others? So many quotas have been added at once. It's simply unbelievable. The Genesis tribe is indeed worthy of being an immortal orthodoxy. This matter is done with dignity. There were praises in the restaurant. Many people were jumping with joy. An extra quota meant an extra opportunity. After all, who didn't want to enter the Genesis ground? Who didn't want to enter such a big stage? That was the center of the world. H, you're really naive. Do you think the Genesis tribe and those major forces are all saints who save people in distress? The Genesis ground is full of all kinds of dangers. There are many poisonous insects, vicious beasts, and many dangerous places. If you're not careful, you'll die. Letting so many people in, when the time comes, you'll be used as cannon fodder by those geniuses. It's been like this for many years. It's just that it hasn't spread. Of course, there were people who sneered and didn't think so. Cannon fodder? Chu Yang agreed with this point of view. The divine realm seemed to especially like to use cannon fodder. Wasn't the beast abyss a bunch of cannon fodder? But even so, there were still countless people who wanted to enter the starting ground. Even those who knew the inside story couldn't refuse. Because entering it meant that one might obtain the inheritances of god-kings, sovereigns, divine herbs, and so on and so forth. No one could refuse the fortune within it. After the different viewpoints were drowned out, some people began to daydream. It would be great if I could go in. Harvesting the divine herbs is secondary. My main goal is to watch the great battle between the chosen. There were also people who sighed and said helplessly, it's not a good place inside. It's incomparably dangerous. Although there are special laws that restrict one's realm, the creatures inside have frighteningly high realms. There are quite a few holy deities. The primordial mystic realm was not an ordinary lesser thousand world. It was considered a very powerful world. Naturally, there were all kinds of creatures in it, and they were all very strong. Naturally, there were many people who were unwilling to accept this. If I can enter, it's for the divine medicine, as well as that forbidden inheritance. If I can obtain it, I'll definitely soar into the heavens. Chapter 1598. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Chu Yang also heard enough information about the starting ground in the restaurant. Other than the gods' chosen ones and those geniuses who didn't need to go through the assessment, everyone else who wanted to enter the starting ground had to go through the assessment. In addition, Those whose cultivation level exceeded the intermediate god stage were all not allowed to enter. The rules were very strict. Even if one was lucky enough to enter, their cultivation level would be limited to the intermediate god stage in the starting ground. The assessment would be carried out on the day the starting ground opened. It was very simple. As long as one passed the checkpoint before the quota was filled, it would be fine. Chu Yang left the restaurant and casually wandered around the Abyss City. Soon, he heard someone shouting at him, selling the so-called topographic map of the starting ground. "Little brother, here is the map of the starting ground. Do you want a copy?" In addition to the topographic map, there is also a detailed explanation of the ferocious beasts in the starting ground, as well as various races and creatures. What is recorded is a big secret. Little brother, if you want to enter the starting ground, you absolutely can't miss this. Chu Yang was slightly stunned. These people in the origin city could be said to be very resourceful. They actually knew everything about the starting ground so clearly. However, he soon laughed. What was so strange about this? The starting ground had opened many times, so it wasn't strange. But he had to admit that these people were very good at doing business. He couldn't help but have the urge to buy a copy. The city was incomparably lively and bustling with activity. Looking over, there were too many martial artists and cultivators. It could be said to be overcrowded with people from all walks of life and various races. There were many figures among them, which made people feel reverence. Chu Yang was very low-key. He observed as he walked and listened to the discussions around him. He pondered in his heart and couldn't help but exclaim, "It's really lively. The green lotus goddess of the fairy realm actually came. Didn't the fairy realm always lose to the outside world? They actually made an exception this time. The green lotus goddess actually came. Oh my God." This news suddenly spread and instantly caused a huge sensation. Everyone looked into the distance and saw a group of people flying into the city. It was the people of the fairy realm. Apart from one man, the rest were all women. Every single woman had skin of ice and bones of jade, and their white clothes fluttered in the wind. As soon as they appeared, they were like celestial fairies that had descended to the mortal world. Every single pair of beautiful eyes contained indescribable intelligence, and every single woman had an outstanding bearing. All of them had the feeling of being otherworldly and about to ride the wind. All of a sudden, the hubbub disappeared, and the world fell silent. Chu Yang was also amazed. When his gaze fell on them, it was as if he was being sucked in. He was almost unable to shift his gaze away. In particular, the woman in the lead was even more amazing. This should be the so-called green lotus goddess, right? Suddenly, Chu Yang was astonished. The moment he saw the green lotus goddess, Shangguan Lan's smiling face appeared in his mind. At this moment, looking at the green lotus goddess was like looking at Shangguan Lan. What's the situation? Could it be that Lan is warning me not to be too fickle in love? Chu Yang couldn't help but touch his nose. He was very puzzled. As soon as the green lotus goddess appeared, the void above Origin City suddenly became blue, as if it had turned into a blue treasure lake in an instant. There were no impurities in it, and the green lotus goddess was like a celestial fairy. Like Shangguan Lan, she wore a veil on her face in front of others, which made her otherworldly aura even more prominent. Her pair of beautiful eyes were also misty, which covered the youthfulness in them, but it made people feel even more moved when they looked at her. Wherever the green lotus goddess went, it seemed that the place would become a painting. Chapter 1599. This entrance is simply amazing. Chu Yang exclaimed in his mind, "Is it appropriate to show off like this? Although it's very classy for a beauty like you to do it like this." This zither tune that appeared out of nowhere caused one to feel intoxicated. There was even a rain of light that sprinkled down, sparkling, translucent, and fluttering about. At the same time, there were countless shining petals dancing around her, making her look even more ethereal and different from ordinary people. How can I touch her? I'll never be able to touch her. In the silence, someone sighed helplessly. Everyone turned around and found that it was an oracle. Soon, many people recognized him. Feng Zun Huan of the Wind Demon Clan. Feng Zhenhuan was incomparably powerful and rarely had an opponent in the younger generation. He was also famous for his handsome looks and was loved by many women. However, at this moment, he actually said such words. There was a sense of helplessness and extreme regret in his words that resonated with many people. That's a goddess. Us ordinary people can't get close to her. We don't have the power to. You want to get close to her? You can only dream. Many handsome young masters couldn't help but whisper. As for the others, they were ashamed of their own inferiority. They couldn't even think about getting close to the Green Lotus goddess. Such a woman, even if they worked hard for their entire life, they would never be able to get close to her. Just then, another strange phenomenon occurred. Droplets of light sprinkled down, fragrant grass grew in the void, and flowers bloomed one after another. Immediately, a fragrance filled the air and the surroundings were full of vitality. In addition, colorful butterflies appeared in the void as if attracted by the holy aura. They flew out from the river of time and space and danced around the Green Lotus goddess. At this moment, the void really did turn into an incomparably beautiful lake. Ripples spread out, and there were actually a few koi swimming around the beauty. Dragon carp. Dragon carp in the void, oh my god. Inconceivable, to think that such a phenomenon would occur. I heard that dragon carps are incomparably spiritual and will only appear next to the purest living beings. It's hard to believe. The Green Lotus goddess doesn't seem to have done anything at all, but it actually produced such a scene. Countless people cried out in surprise. Countless people exclaimed in surprise. They were completely shocked by the scene before them. Chu Yang was also at a loss for words. The Green Lotus goddess had indeed done nothing. His divine intuition was very sharp. Therefore, he really couldn't imagine what kind of woman she was. How holy and beautiful must she be to be like this? He felt that Shangguanlan's appearance was definitely not worse than that of the Green Lotus goddess, but even Shangguanlan did not seem to be able to cause such a vision. Chu Yang was shocked, but the Green Lotus goddess was even more shocked. She didn't understand what was going on at all. Then, a feeling of a woman dressing up for her sweetheart emerged in her heart. It was as if her sweetheart was here, so when she came out, she wanted to show her most beautiful side. In addition, this strange feeling became more and more obvious and stronger. When she followed this feeling, her divine intuition suddenly locked onto a man in the crowd. She saw that this man had a very strange expression on his face. The corner of his mouth seemed to have just twitched. He was not enchanted by her, but was puzzled by something. Strange, why do I have such a strange feeling towards this person? The Green Lotus goddess was sure that she definitely did not know this man. She was very surprised. At the same time, she also suddenly felt that this man was extremely shocking. However, no matter how she sensed, she could not sense that this man was extraordinary. Could it be that my divine intuition is telling me that he's an extremely dangerous person? Chu Yang felt that the Green Lotus goddess' divine intuition had landed on him and was scanning him. He was also surprised. How did she notice me? Chapter 1600. Chu Yang immediately asked the Ice Kuan about the fairy realm and the situation of the fairies. After the Ice Kuan explained, he was stunned again. The fairy realm was like the kingdom of women in his memory. They didn't need men to reproduce. The fairy realm was independent and almost isolated from the world. However, the women in it were all extremely powerful. Hence, no one dared to provoke them. The Green Lotus goddess. Only the son of the absolute beginning can touch her. No wonder the son of the absolute beginning personally came out of the city to welcome her. If it were me, I would definitely go too. Unfortunately, I don't have such a chance. After the people were amazed by the Green Lotus goddess, they immediately noticed the son of the absolute beginning beside her. Although he always had a smile on his face like Ruo Chun Feng and was very elegant, no one could hide his astonishment. He seemed to be the ruler of this world. A golden boy and a jade girl. A talented man and a beautiful woman. What a perfect pair. Many people were envious. They wished they could be the absolute beginning's son. The Green Lotus goddess and the son of the absolute beginning walked side by side. To many people, it was a beautiful scene. The Son of the Absolute Beginning. Is this the Son of the Absolute Beginning? Chu Yang looked at the Son of the Absolute Beginning. He couldn't help but squint his eyes. He could feel the power of the Son of the Absolute Beginning. Roar. Suddenly, a bestial roar was heard. Many people felt as if a ferocious tiger was pouncing on them. Then, they saw a person appear in the void above their heads. Another genius had arrived. Given the distance between them, it was as if he could reach them with a single pounce. The son of all beasts of the beast god sect. The son of all beasts is here too. The starting ground will be lively. There will definitely be a fierce battle. The people were even more excited. The son of all beasts was terrifying and extremely belligerent. Who could guarantee that he wouldn't challenge the son of the absolute beginning, the green lotus goddess, and the others? After that, the entire origin city was in an uproar as more and more supreme sky prides arrived, bringing light to the entire origin city. Waves after waves of exclamations could be heard incessantly. Although Chu Yang was too lazy to pay attention to it, when he heard about the peerless beauty, he couldn't help but look over. For example, the witch of the shifting flower palace has also come. Hearing the cries of surprise from the crowd, his eyes involuntarily looked over. Immediately, he saw a young lady in green arrive. Her delicate body emitted waves of fragrance, and a decadent voice resounded in his mind. She was like a seductive demon. If the green lotus goddess from before was holy and unapproachable, then this demoness from the shifting flower palace emitted endless temptation, causing people to sink into lust and be unable to extricate themselves. Chu Yang was no exception. He was bewitched by her. When he woke up in an instant, his heart trembled. This woman is also very powerful. Then, Hua Wushuang of the Flame Sect, Bai Wenpin of the Pupil Clan, and other famous monstrous geniuses appeared one by one and arrived in Origin City. Next, the supreme sky prides and outstanding representatives of the same generation appeared one after another, causing people to be incomparably shocked. With so many young supreme sky prides suddenly gathered together, it would definitely lead to many huge clashes. This type of great confrontation was extremely valuable, because all of the young supreme beings who appeared were all formidable and stunning figures. The Battle of the Peerless is destined to start, but I'm afraid we won't have the chance to see it. In the starting ground, in order to compete for the divine medicine, the forbidden inheritance, and the absolute beginning chi, the battle between the supreme sky prides will probably be extremely fierce. The battle scene will definitely be soul-stirring and shocking. Many people couldn't help but look forward to it. Some were even daydreaming about it, their blood boiling. Chapter 1601. Scion of Light. Upon hearing this, Chu Yang couldn't help but sneak into the crowd to observe the Scion of Light. Because of his fiend god martial soul, his comprehension of light and darkness was the most profound. But now, his two strongest aspects couldn't keep up. At the very least, they were far inferior to lightning, water, and fire. If only I could borrow this Scion of Light's guardhood to take a look, Chu Yang thought to himself. After comprehending light, in the opposite direction, darkness will naturally follow. I've dealt with two of them in one go. Unfortunately, guardhood was the most important thing to practitioners. It was the essence of one's own cultivation. If one wasn't a close relative, who would let one observe it? The arrival of the Scion of Light's group was like the arrival of a great sun, causing the world to suddenly brighten. Like many other geniuses, the Scion of Light's appearance couldn't be seen at all. Because the light was too dazzling, it was like a sacred sun was walking. Why don't I find an opportunity to stun this Scion of Light? As Chu Yang was thinking of this, the light soul formed from the 7 souls of the Lord of Light in his body suddenly shook. In an instant, Chu Yang and the Scion of Light sensed each other. Bang! The Scion of Light was walking at the very front. He suddenly stopped in his tracks, causing the Radiant God Church's group to stop as well. They were like moving stars that suddenly stopped moving, causing the entire world to tremble. Especially the Scion of Light. His last step seemed to have stomped on everyone's hearts, causing them to suddenly feel suffocated. It was as if 100,000 mountains were pressing down on their hearts. The Radiant Sovereign seems to have a great relationship with the Radiant God Church. That's why he reacted like that. Chu Yang had already controlled the light soul, but he couldn't control the Scion of Light. It was already too late. Buzz. The Scion of Light's tiger-like eyes shot two beams of sacred light at Chu Yang, fixing him firmly. This sudden scene caused a commotion in the crowd. The people around Chu Yang were shocked. They were even more afraid of being implicated. So, they all retreated with a bang like a tide. Only Chu Yang was left behind in the same place. The fact that the Scion of Light, an unparalleled genius, had suddenly set his eyes on such a nameless person left everyone flabbergasted. Many gazes couldn't help but fall on Chu Yang. They were incomparably curious, just what was the relationship between Chu Yang and this Scion of Light? Chu Yang's heart trembled. This time, I'm afraid it's going to be troublesome. Who knows, before we even enter the starting ground, there will be a huge commotion. As for the Scion of Light, his gaze was fixed on Chu Yang's body. Although he didn't see anything, he was extremely sure of his previous perception. Reverence. Yes, it was reverence, incomparable reverence. At that moment, the Scion of Light felt a deep reverence for Chu Yang from the bottom of his heart, a deep reverence for him. This kind of feeling made the Scion of Light feel as if he was facing his father. The Heavenly Father was the hierarch of the radiant God cult. No, the reverence I felt just now was even more intense than when I faced my Heavenly Father. The Scion of Light instantly became incomparably sure of this point. But when he carefully sensed again, he found that Chu Yang was absolutely no more than an ordinary person. He was extremely perplexed. How could I have such a feeling? In front of such a lowly person, how could I have such a feeling of reverence? His brows wrinkled in a split second. He couldn't understand why he had left. Chapter 1602. Chu Yang was powerless against these Dao protectors, so the Ice Kuan had to attack. Once the Ice Kuan appeared, the absolute primordium sovereign would immediately notice and expose him. When provoking the sovereign, the Ice Kuan showed too many traces. Troublesome. Chu Yang's frown deepened. The other party didn't speak, so he didn't speak either. Both sides didn't speak, but the crowd couldn't help but quietly discuss. Son of Light, what's going on? That person offended the Son of Light. Impossible, I was beside that person just now, and that person didn't say a word. How could he offend the Son of Light? Unless they already had a grudge. Grudge? Are you kidding? That person's aura is ordinary. If he had a grudge with the Son of Light, he would have died long ago. Amidst the crowd's discussion, the Son of Light pointed at Chu Yang and ordered, kneel down and apologize. I'll spare your life. Immediately, the crowd was extremely surprised. They didn't understand the Son of Light's actions at all. Why would he attack an ordinary person? Damn it. Chu Yang's expression was extremely ugly, and he cursed in his heart, if this wasn't Origin City, right under the nose of the absolute primordium sovereign, I would have killed you in minutes. Then he opened his mouth and questioned repeatedly. Do I have a grudge with you? Have I ever offended you? Slap. Before he finished speaking, there was a crisp slap. Chu Yang was slapped in the face. His ears buzzed, and blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. If he hadn't reacted quickly and used spirit chi to protect his teeth, his head would have been slapped out. Immediately, a wave of anger rushed to his head. Master, restrain yourself. You must restrain yourself. This is Origin City. If you make a move and the absolute primordium sovereign notices you, you'll be in trouble. The Ice Kuan cried out in alarm. It had always been its master who recognized reason and not people. Today, he had been slapped in the face for nothing. How could he endure such resentment? It was already cursing in its heart. Wasn't this forcing it to die? Even if Chu Yang flipped out, it would still be finished. Thus, it hated this group of the radiant god cult to the extreme. It wanted to seize the chance to slaughter them all. Donggo, this is an order, not a request, and definitely not a request, do you understand? The Scion of Light's aura was incomparably cold, and his voice was as cold as ice, directly entering people's ears and souls, making them feel as if they were about to freeze. Haha. Chu Yang laughed out loud. Eastern Dog, I finally understand why I was slapped. It turns out that there is such a collective name. There was also discrimination in the god realm, but the difference was that this was discrimination between the East and the West. The radiance emitted by the sign of light was very dazzling, but to Chu Yang, it was nothing. How could it block his line of sight? He had long seen through the sign of light. He had blue eyes, an aquiline nose, white skin, and a bird-like appearance, just like the Westerners in his previous life. This made him feel even more humiliated. Ever since the memories of his previous life awakened, he had always been the one slapping others. Today, he was actually slapped by such a thing. How could he face those who had been slapped by him? Boom! The crowd exploded, and then it was like a pot of boiling water. There was a lot of discussion, but no one dared to make a sound. Who dared to offend the sign of light? Seeing this, the sign of light couldn't help but sneer, as if saying, "So what if I humiliate you, Dongo? Do you dare to fart?" "I'll send you to meet the dogs," hit Heavenly Father. The Son of Light's face darkened, and he immediately threatened through his spirit, "Eastern Dog, it looks like you really want to die. I don't dare to kill you now, but if I want to kill you, do you think you can escape?" Escape? Would this young master escape? If this young master didn't crush you to death in any other place, this young master would change his surname to yours. Chu Yang replied straightforwardly. Then, he raised his hand and slapped his face. The crisp sound of a slap resounded through the crowd, and the entire place fell into a dead silence. Chapter 1604. The Son of Light suffered a heavy slap. His face was twisted to the other side, and 7 or 8 teeth in his mouth were knocked out. However, he endured it and even swallowed them. He didn't manage to slap the wild dog, but his teeth were knocked out by the wild dog. Embarrassing, too embarrassing. Where would he put his face? "I can't let others see. If they see me, I'll be laughed at to death." The Son of Light thought one after another. His emotions were indescribable and extremely complicated. He directly used his cultivation to grow the teeth that were knocked out again. However, slap. Just as the Son of Light's teeth grew out, another loud slap sounded. Chu Yang gave him another slap, and his teeth were knocked out again. His vision turned black, and he mechanically swallowed his teeth again, using his cultivation to grow teeth again. The difference was that this time, he was alert, but it was useless. Slap. Chu Yang raised his hand and slapped him again. The Son of Light was right in front of him. If he couldn't slap him, he might as well die. Swish. After the Son of Light was slapped again, he quickly retreated. His eyes were filled with hatred, as if there was a mountain of knives and a sea of fire in his eyes. All kinds of torture appeared. Who was he? The Scion of Light was actually forced to swallow his own teeth 3 times. Swallowing his teeth 3 times was like swallowing 3 mouthfuls of feces. For the sake of his face, the Son of Light was like being cuckolded by his wife. Who could be more miserable than him? However, what he couldn't accept was that he couldn't dodge and was slapped 3 times by a mere Eastern dog. "Western pig, are you threatening me? Do you think I'm a bunch of spineless people from the Source State?" Chu Yang sneered. "You're blind. Remember, you can come to the Source State as you wish, but in the Abyss State, you'd better tuck your tail between your legs and be a pig." Although the Abyss State and the Source State are only 1 word apart, the Abyss State is not the Source State, and the Abyss Master is not the absolute beginning ruler. Chu Yang deliberately smeared the Source State and the absolute beginning ruler again and again while elevating the Abyss State and the Abyss Master. Between the 2 neighboring states, if the Yuan State could endure Yuan State's mockery, then he would admit defeat. Sure enough, there was an explosion in the crowd. "Brat, who are you calling a coward? Who are you calling a sissy?" Chu Yang's face was full of disdain. "He's just a Scion of Light. Look at how scared you are. Don't say that you're from the East in the future, lest you bring shame to the people of the Yuanju. Bullshit. Your Yuan province is worse than shit. The Yuan Lord is not the ruler. The entire Yuan province is the weakest. Yuanju is just a descendant of cannon fodder. Why are you being so arrogant? I don't know what I'm talking about. Who is embarrassing who?" The crowd was surging, and the situation was no longer under the control of the Scion of Light. In such a situation, If he were to act again, the consequences would be hard to imagine. Thus, he was so angry that his entire body was trembling. He could only endure it for now and settle the score later. The humiliation was extreme. At that time, I will definitely make this sharp-tongued Eastern dog suffer a fate worse than death. The Scion of Light clenched his teeth so hard that they almost shattered. Ha ha! Chu Yang's mocking voice resounded in the Scion of Light's ears. Soon after, he heard Chu Yang proudly say, "Our Yuan province is weak, but we can't be weak. Our Yuan province is the descendant of cannon fodder, but our bones are tough. We kill the enemy first, and we don't fear death. The heavenly soul world is not afraid, and Western Pig is not afraid of you people of Yuan province." After a pause, Chu Yang mocked everyone of Yuan province. "You people are stronger, but you only know how to hug Western Pig and cry. In order to curry favor with Western Pig, you people and your Grand Primordium ruler are willing to wear dresses and dance for them, haha." The people of Yuan province were speechless. This bastard of Yuan province mocked Grand Primordium ruler again and again. Just this alone was enough to seal their mouths. At least, they did not dare to. Chapter 1605. Things were getting out of hand, and Chu Yang was actually feeling nervous. This was a risky move. If the absolute beginning dominator appeared and paid attention to him, all his secrets would be exposed, and he would die without a doubt. He was betting that the absolute beginning dominator wouldn't pay attention to such a trivial matter. He was also betting that even if the absolute beginning dominator knew, he wouldn't appear. Because once the absolute beginning dominator appeared, if he didn't kill the Son of Light, he wouldn't be able to get out of this embarrassing situation. He wouldn't be able to give the people of the East an explanation, and he would be admitting that he was afraid of the West. But how could he be 100% sure that the absolute beginning dominator didn't care about all this? If the absolute beginning dominator was like this, Chu Yang would have to admit defeat and meet the King of Hell. Hee hee. Suddenly, a mocking voice rang out. Then, without anyone noticing, someone appeared in front of everyone. Although it was broad daylight, this person was pitch black. At the same time, waves of death aura spread out. Underworld Child, the Underworld Child from the Underworld race. When did he appear? Why didn't we notice him at all? As expected of the silent night lurker, no one noticed him. From the whispers and discussions of the crowd, Chu Yang already knew this person's background. Light and darkness were opposites. Underworld Child was obviously here to laugh at the Son of Light. Interesting, really interesting. Underworld Child's laughing voice rang out. The great Son of Light was actually slapped 3 times by a mere East dog. If this were to spread back, it would definitely become a much-told story. As Underworld Child spoke, he appeared in front of Chu Yang. "East dog, don't misunderstand. I don't have any good feelings for you. I hate you to the extreme. Also, as for an ant like you, if I raised my hand just now, I would have crushed you to death. Why would I allow you to talk nonsense?" Chu Yang was originally overjoyed because of the appearance of the Son of Light's enemy, but it instantly disappeared. "Come, East dog." Underworld Child stood in front of Chu Yang. Waves of death aura surged out. An ordinary person wouldn't be able to withstand it. "I'll stand and let you slap me. If you can slap me, I'll call you Grandpa." It was clear that he wanted to use his strength to bully and humiliate Chu Yang to death. Chu Yang secretly sneered, "Black Western Pig, you found the wrong person." He suddenly grinned, revealing 8 white teeth that were shining brightly. "Are you sure you want your teeth to be slapped out before being swallowed? You think I'm that piece of trash? How many times do you want to be slapped? Up to you. Let me remind you, you'll be even uglier than a white Western Pig when you get angry." The Underworld Child couldn't help but laugh coldly. If the Son of Light was a white pig, then he was a black pig. "Eastern dog, do you have the ability? If you have the ability, as long as I bark, I will be your dog." Heh heh. Chu Yang laughed coldly. "Are you ready?" Wang. Underworld Child suddenly erupted with a tremendous pressure, but he immediately retracted it. "I still need to prepare, Pa." He hadn't even finished speaking when Chu Yang's various slaps had already arrived, and sent him flying. His teeth and blood spattered out of his mouth, and fell to the ground with a very light sound. The 6 teeth were still on the ground, rolling like a small wheel. They rolled for more than 300 meters before coming to a stop. Wherever the teeth passed, the people of the Source Province would make a path for them, as if they were afraid of blocking them. The surroundings were silent. It seemed that only the soft sound of the teeth rolling could be heard. Whether it was the Son of Light or Du Mingzi, Chu Yang hated them to the extreme. Killing intent rose in his heart. Who's afraid of who? Isn't it just death? If I don't dare to slap them, then what's the point of living? Chapter 1606. The underworld child was so ashamed that he couldn't show his face. He didn't see it as a joke and had become a joke himself. Was there anything more ridiculous than this? The speed of the slap made him realize that this Eastern dog wasn't ordinary. Are you satisfied now? Chu Yang felt that he hadn't said this for a long time. Rumble. The dark aura rolled like a tide and dyed the area around the underworld child black. Light turned into darkness, and day turned into night. The rolling death aura also surged. The roars, howls, and wails of the dead souls rolled out, making people's scalps numb and their hair stand on end. The underworld child was enraged. This sentence was like stripping him naked in front of everyone and showing his ugliness. Chu Yang wasn't afraid. The 2 pigs were only at the incipient god realm. If he didn't have a good estimation, these 2 pigs would have become dead pigs already. Black Western Pig, are you very angry? Are you going to flip out? I'll allow you to flip out. Bing Kuan shook his head. His master's bad habit was acting up again. When he got the chance, he wanted to torture people to death. His courage was extraordinary. He was sure that if he didn't find the underworld child and the light child's corpses, his master must have changed his surname. Did you learn something? The underworld child didn't say anything. Chu Yang directly mocked the people from the source state. Women, don't show off in front of me in the future. I'm not afraid of white Western Pig, black Western Pig, and I'm not afraid of you women in skirts. The absolute beginning ruler hadn't appeared yet, but Chu Yang's heart had calmed down. It seemed that the absolute beginning ruler was afraid of human words. He would probably let the other people of the absolute beginning tribe handle this, such as the son of absolute beginning. As for the underworld child and the light child's plan, of course, he saw it clearly. He provoked them again. White Western Pig, black Western Pig, do you want to kill me now? After waiting for a while, there was no answer. Chu Yang smiled disdainfully. You're welcome to find trouble, but before you do, remember to bring a coffin. The source state isn't the source state. After saying this, Chu Yang swaggered off under the gazes of everyone present. In an instant, he disappeared without a trace. The Son of Light and the Son of Underworld were about to follow them, but the Son of the Grand Beginning had already rushed over. When he reached the 2 of them, his expression was extremely gloomy. Both of you, are you planning to humiliate the Tai Chu clan? The extremely rude and sharp words made the Son of Light and the underworld child's faces turn ugly. They were even more embarrassed, but they didn't dare to do anything because they still wanted to enter the starting ground. The starting ground was in the origin state, while the Grand Primordium ruler controlled the origin state. Logically speaking, he was the landlord. Now that the 2 of them had caused such a ruckus, what else could it be but a slap in the face? Previously, if the Sign of Light had directly killed Chu Yang, the matter wouldn't have escalated so much, and perhaps nothing would have happened. But now, it was completely different. The battle between the East and the West was completely involved. The situation was completely different. The 2 of them didn't answer, and the Son of the Grand Beginning didn't say anything else. He directly left. When he wanted to look for Chu Yang, he found that Chu Yang had already disappeared. Chu Yang left and went straight to the origin state without stopping. He asked the Ice Kuan, Kuan, is the Grand Primordium ruler watching me? The Grand Primordium ruler was very powerful. If he was watching Chu Yang, he wouldn't know. But the Ice Kuan was completely different. The Ice Kuan rolled his eyes. Only now did he realize what he had just done. Couldn't he change his bad temper? Master, you're very lucky. From before until now, The Grand Primordium ruler's consciousness hasn't descended. He's probably arguing with someone. It should be about the starting ground. Phew, Chu Yang let out a long breath and completely relaxed. He said, "That's good. I don't have to escape back to the origin state and then come back." Just now, it was very dangerous. The Grand Primordium ruler was like a sword hanging in the sky, hanging above his head. Once it fell, he would definitely die. His actions in front of the Son of Light and the underworld child weren't wise, but he couldn't control his anger. Fortunately, he was lucky. Chapter 1607. Afterward, he rushed back to Origin City again. There were even more people in the city, and it was even more bustling. This was a grand event. Any faction with a little bit of fame participated, not to mention those supreme factions. There were even people who crossed over 100 provinces to come. There were countless extraordinary characters. The people's discussions also became even more heated. At first, they were still discussing Chu Yang's matter, saying that he was audacious to the extreme, and were even more furious and dissatisfied because Origin Province was belittled. It was just that afterward, everything was completely drowned out by the torrent that was about to open the starting ground. On the third day after Chu Yang arrived in Origin City was filled with cultivators everywhere. Cheers and heated discussions were endless. Because the arrival of those gods' chosen ones and prodigies continuously caused a great commotion. Oh, that's the young supreme of the white tiger race. His entire body is golden, muscles like armor, baleful aura threatening, incomparably powerful. The son of destiny of the destiny race also came. Just don't know if it's like the legends, that he carries destiny on him. One imposing and resplendent figure after another attracted people's attention. Every supreme prodigy, their life was destined to be incomparably glorious. Chu Yang was even more cautious because of the matter of the Son of Light previously, afraid of revealing a flaw. Those gods' chosen ones, goddesses, supreme beings, and so on, he watched from afar, his state of mind incomparably calm. On the fourth day, the assessment began. Countless people rubbed their palms, planning to enter the starting ground and fight for a bright future. Hence, there were many people participating in the assessment. The crowd was packed, densely packed. It was unknown just how many people and how many races there were. The absolute beginning race was long prepared and even more experienced, dealing with it very calmly. The assessment began very soon. A large array was activated, erupting with endless light. Immediately, a group of people rushed into the vast array. It was unknown how many people there were, but in the end, less than 3,000 people walked out and reached the other end. Why is it so difficult? There were already people complaining. However, they also knew that if it was not so, too many people would have gone in. After that, the assessment continued. Chu Yang was undergoing the 36th assessment. Entering the large array, illusions were born inside, attacking one's divine soul. There were even powerful ferocious beasts that pounced out. Chu Yang hid his strength and passed the assessment not quickly, but he passed smoothly. During this period of time, more and more people failed to make the cut, and so did the complaints. Is there a mistake? How many people can pass this type of test? Many people were incredibly resentful, but they suddenly lost their voices. A terrifying aura permeated the entire area. The examinees were shocked to discover that a vermilion bird was actually among the examinees. He stood there, causing all the surrounding creatures' hair to stand on end as they trembled. Vermilion bird, he also wants to participate in the examination. Is there any justice in this world? Many people were in despair, feeling even more powerless. Soon, someone cried out in alarm. The young man with the ancient sword on his back stood out like a crane among chickens. No one dared to approach him, and he immediately caused a commotion. Oh my heavens, Sword Pavilion Xiao Qiuyu. How far is the Zhen province from our Yuan province? I can't believe he came here. The Sword Pavilion was the pinnacle existence in the myriad gods world. The Tao of the sword was incomparably powerful, and it was boundlessly terrifying. Although there weren't many disciples from the Sword Pavilion, every one of them was world-shaking. With the appearance of Xiao Qiuyu and the others, The primordial clan did not dare to slight them and immediately invited them in. Chu Yang also passed the second test smoothly, but his results were very ordinary. As for how many people failed to make the cut, he didn't know. It could be said that there were too many to count. From this, it could be seen how far-reaching and great the influence of the starting ground was. Now that the quota has been set, before entering the starting ground, a hale and hearty old man opened his mouth halfway. His voice was like a golden bell. He swept a glance at the crowd, and then loudly reminded them, "Here, I will repeat again, the starting ground is extremely dangerous, and you may lose your life at any moment. You have to be careful. After entering, you are responsible for your own life and death. The primordial clan will not be responsible for anything." Chu Yang did not care about the old man's words at all. His killing intent surged, and he almost couldn't wait to enter and kill the Son of Light and Underworld child. These days, whenever he thought about what happened a few days ago, he would feel bursts of anger. Chapter 1608. To most people, the old man's words were nonsense. Almost no one listened to him. Naturally, everyone knew about the dangers in the starting ground. However, they were still looking forward to it and were excited. Perhaps they would be lucky enough to get a great opportunity and soar to the sky. They could be on par with those geniuses, or even trample those geniuses under their feet and make a name for themselves. The hope was slim, but it was such a slim hope that it ignited the ambition in countless people's hearts. None of those who took the risk to enter the starting ground were willing to be ordinary and mediocre. They all had restless hearts and hoped to be like the geniuses, attracting the attention of the world, being looked forward to, and being respected and admired by the people. As soon as the old man's voice fell, he stepped aside. Immediately, many people who passed the test moved. They were as vast as the sea, and like a flood breaking through a dam, madly rushed into the village of the starting ground. It was as if they were going to drown everything. The starting ground was a powerful world, much more powerful than the ordinary dimensional worlds. Its world barrier was also incomparably firm. Entering through the spacetime tunnel, Chu Yang felt as if he had entered the god's world from the heavenly soul world. Immediately, he felt the rules of the world in the starting ground. The rules of the world in the starting ground were very different from those in the god's world. Its aura was even more ancient and distant than the god's world. If it was a tour in his previous life, Chu Yang felt as if he had entered an ancient ruin and temporarily got rid of the aura of the modern era. Should I brand my soul imprint in the starting ground? It seemed to be worth it to do so in such a world. When the soul imprint he placed in it completely matured, the starting ground would be his and no longer the absolute beginning dominator's. He was a little tempted, but he didn't dare to make any moves. The absolute beginning dominator occupied this place. If he made any movements, the absolute beginning dominator would immediately notice it. At that time, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. Kuan, if it's here, I think I can grasp it more accurately. Chu Yang was starting to miss the ice Kuan. Having an elder at home was like having a treasure. This saying was indeed true. The ice Kuan was unable to enter the starting ground due to the restriction of its realm. Even though Chu Yang had 11 grotto heavens, and the people of the starting clan definitely wouldn't be able to detect it, there wasn't much meaning in entering in the starting ground. The ice Kuan's cultivation was also restricted to the mid-god realm. Therefore, it was better to let the ice Kuan set up outside. Once something went wrong, it would be faster and safer to escape. Forget it. For the sake of caution, I won't have this idea. Chu Yang's eyes let out an intimidating glint, his killing intent blazing like fire. Don't worry about anything else for the time being. I want to slaughter this western pig, the sign of light. For this moment, he had endured for nearly 4 days. It was time to end it. Whoosh, whoosh. After Chu Yang entered the starting ground, he immediately spread out his figure to look for the sign of light. He wanted to kill him and cause a huge commotion. At the very beginning, a heaven's pride would die. How would the starting clan and the others react? What would they think? Would they be nervous? He was looking forward to it. However, the starting ground was incomparably huge. Even the people of the Radiant God cult couldn't find him, let alone the sign of light. Every supreme force had a certain quota to enter the starting ground. For example, the Radiant God cult had at least 300 quotas this time. Chapter 1609. After searching for a while, Chu Yang stopped his search. During this process, his actions were too unrestrained. There were several times when he attracted the creatures in the starting ground to attack him. There was even one time when he almost barged into a dangerous place. Fortunately, his ability wasn't bad. In the end, he avoided the trouble. Where could the Genesis aura be? After that, Chu Yang started to have a headache again. He didn't have much interest in the starting ground. The only thing he cared about was the Genesis aura. As for treasures and inheritances, they weren't in his eyes. Speaking of treasures, he had the Void Lotus, which he hadn't devoured yet. He had provoked the absolute beginning sovereign and seized the time acceleration law and gravity law, which he hadn't refined yet. There were also many comprehensions that he hadn't digested yet. There were also many cultivation techniques waiting for him to organize, comprehend, and expand. Therefore, he didn't have much need for the starting ground's inheritances. Of course, if he could get it, he would naturally seize it. However, to him, the most important thing now was time. In less than half a month, the Heavenly Spirit World's 6 Great Academies Grand Competition would begin. He had to rush back before then to fight with Chen Burang and participate in the Grand Competition. The Heavenly Spirit World was his foundation. Therefore, he had no scruples in the God's world. After all, he could leave with a slap of his butt. This was also why he dared to provoke and ridicule the absolute beginning sovereign. I know too little about the starting ground. I can only take one step at a time. There was no need to rush. Chu Yang suppressed the impatience in his heart. Only then did he look at the general situation of the starting ground and observe the people around him. In the starting ground, he couldn't see any buildings for the time being. It was as if he was in a vast and desolate forest that no one had ever set foot in. Most of the scenery and living beings were crude and rough. Looking up, they were all huge and huge. The grass was like a tree, the ancient trees were like mountains, the mountains were like stars. So much so that Chu Yang felt as if he had become an ant. Although it was a little exaggerated, everything in the starting ground was much bigger than outside. Because so many people from the outside had barged in, from time to time, there would be cries of fear and misery, accompanied by the roars of beasts and the cries of birds. There were also some incomprehensible syllables that were accompanied by great anger. The outsiders have begun to clash with the creatures of the starting ground. Chu Yang was very clear about this. He also knew that the initial chi was definitely in a dangerous place and was extremely difficult to obtain. Otherwise, the living beings in the starting ground would have been wiped clean long ago. How could the people outside the starting ground have a chance? Capture a creature of the starting ground and interrogate it. I should be able to find out the location of the starting aura soon. Now that he had found a way, he immediately released his divine instinct and began to search for the creatures of the starting ground. When he discovered a 7-colored ant the size of a small mountain, a sharp whistling sound pierced through the air from his right, accompanied by a dazzling light. Whoosh! Chu Yang dodged. He wasn't enraged. Entering the starting ground, a place without rules, many people would release the demons in their hearts and turn them into beasts. It was a light arrow. When he looked over, he saw 2 Westerners. They were both more than 2 meters tall. One of them had golden curly hair while the other had a shiny bald head. Both of them had dragon-like muscles. Their bodies were filled with explosive energy. They were both at first level of incipient god realm. Eastern Dog, come here and help me with something. The golden curly hair looked at Chu Yang playfully. The bald man also smiled. Eastern Dog, it's the honor that God has given you. Chapter 1610. Chu Yang was overjoyed. He had searched high and low for something, only to find it by chance. He had been looking for these western pigs, but to no avail. Now, these western pigs had delivered themselves to him. As for helping them, that was easy. They must have discovered something, but they were not sure of the danger in the area, so they sent him to be cannon fodder. Chu Yang continued forward. The two became even more playful and impudent. This eastern dog is so obedient. He avoided a beating. No, no, no. The bald man shook his head and said, "It is the Lord's glory that guided him, and he listened to the Lord's teachings. Hence, he will get a bone later." The two laughed loudly. Then, they ordered Chu Yang, Eastern Dog, "Come with us." The three of them flew, and in a short period of time, they arrived in front of the pitch-black cave entrance. A strong smell of blood came from within, and black blood slowly flowed out from within the cave. At the entrance of the cave, there was half a body of a young man about 25 or 26 years old. His intestines were all over the ground. Before he died, he was filled with fear. His eyes were wide open, and his mouth was wide open. It was as if he was screaming in fear or begging for mercy before he died. However, no one pitied him. Aside from Chu Yang, there were many people who were driven away or captured here. Among them, many were injured. Some even had their arms or legs chopped off. Chu Yang glanced around. There were at least 300 to 400 people. As for the light divine race in the west, there were close to 100 people. Damn it. What evil is in the cave? It can actually suppress the divine dragon sword. I can feel the will left behind by the light divine dragon before he died. This should be related to the underworld race. It seems like an underworld dragon and the light divine dragon perished together. These heretics of the underworld race all deserve to die. The light divine dragon is our guardian divine dragon. It is holy and incomparably powerful. If not for the sneak attack of those evil beings, they would not have succeeded. Near the entrance of the cave were two men with a pair of silver wings on their backs. They were the leaders of this group of more than 100 people. If Chu Yang was not mistaken, these two people should have the blood of angels, so they appeared to be extremely noble. Soon, Chu Yang learned the names of these two people from their conversation. Joseph and Borna. Fuck, not only does she look like a Western bird, but she also has a Western bird name. Why don't you get a girl with blonde hair, blue eyes, a bouncing chest, and a butt as big as a ball? You let me see all these things, how I miss them, how I feel sad. God says, you are all guilty. Chu Yang was extremely unhappy. He glanced around, but he didn't see any of those stunning Western girls from his previous life. Where was Shinyo? His tiger eyes couldn't wait any longer. You, and you, all of you Eastern dogs, charge in. Joseph gave the order to nearly 30 people, forcing them into the cave. At the same time, he flapped his silver wings, which erupted with incomparably dazzling light and released an incomparably shocking aura in order to intimidate. This scene was like herding dozens of pigs into a slaughterhouse. Number 30 also knew his fate and was terrified, but he didn't dare to resist. Bang! The person at the very front didn't move his feet. Joseph sneered, and his large white hand slapped down, directly bursting this person's head like a watermelon. Brain juice mixed with blood splattered on the bodies of the others. Eastern dogs, do you still need me to teach you what to do? Hehe, the head bursting like a firework, really beautiful. Borna closed his eyes, an incomparably intoxicated expression on his face. As if he was talking to his lover, he said, I also want to set off a firework. Chu Yang looked at this scene and didn't sympathize. They had been bullied to this extent, and if they didn't have the slightest bit of guts, then why would they say anything? However, after all, not everyone had guts. More importantly, he couldn't stand these things. Especially that Borna, who looked a little perverted and stared at Chu Yang's eyes. Chapter 16:11. As soon as Chu Yang's voice came out, whether it was the people of the Divine Light cult or those who were like pigs and sheep, they couldn't help but look over in an instant. Who wasn't afraid of death? I want to see Shinyo's breasts, I want to see Shinyo's buttocks, is there a problem? Facing the crowd, Chu Yang spread his hands and said, as a man, it is normal to be interested in foreign women. After all, there is a forest outside the forest. As the main promoters in charge of the reproduction of the race, we must sow seeds everywhere. Was he crazy? At this time, he was still concerned about the fate of the human race. Their gazes became even more surprised. Chu Yang smiled and said proudly, "Everyone, I don't want to criticize you, but as a man, you have to take the initiative, especially Xinyo. How novel. Don't you have a little desire to explore? Don't you want to expand the territory of men? Everyone, you are not as good as me, you need to learn from me to maintain the advanced nature of men." Interesting. Where did you catch this dog? Joseph smiled brightly and looked at Chu Yang from head to toe. It is indeed interesting. Borna also smiled. He also looked at Chu Yang. A mere Eastern dog wants to have ideas about us Western women. In the words of you Eastern people, you are called a toad wanting to eat swan meat. No, no, no. He immediately corrected. Please forgive me, Lord, how can I do this? If Lena knows, she will definitely kill me. This bird, Chu Yang was especially unhappy. He actually said that he was a toad wanting to eat swan meat. Are you reminding me that Xinyo are all sows? He said leisurely, hiding it like this, and even slandering it like this. It seems that you Western pigs are not good enough. Xinyo is already complaining about you. He put his hands behind his back, looked up at the sky, and said, Lord, Xinyo needs my salvation. I am willing to give my body for this, to satisfy their imagination of a man. Wuliang Tianzua. Eastern dog, you are presumptuous. How dare you? Joseph, Borna, and almost everyone from the Western divine sect roared in unison. It was a collective reaction. Joseph's gaze was sinister and cold as ice. Eastern dogs, how can you be compared to us Western men? How can Western women fall for dogs like you? Is the Lord something you can speak of? Borna was no longer a pervert, nor was he in the mood to play around. He roared, Eastern dog, how can you bask in the glory of the Lord? How can you be favored by the Lord? If you dare to be disrespectful to the Lord and blaspheme him again, I swear I will make you beg for death. Chu Yang smiled like a flower. He picked his ears and criticized, why are you shouting so loudly? Do you think I'm deaf too? Something's wrong. Then, he smirked as if he had just realized something. He slapped his thigh and said, oh, I get it. You guys are so excited. It seems that the situation of the Western girls is worrying. They must be in the depths of hell, suffering. In the face of such suffering, as the #1 man in the world, I hereby solemnly announce that I will save them, give them light and hope, and let them see a real man. He didn't dare to ignore it, so he felt sorry for the Western girls and sobbed, Western girls, you guys are so pitiful. Western girls, you guys are so pitiful. My heart is bleeding just thinking about how you guys are living a life worse than death. Joseph and Borna were simply stunned by Chu Yang. They didn't know that they were so unbearable. Chapter 16:12. Was this guy sick in the head? The others were bewildered. It was fine if this sick guy was killed, but it would be troublesome if they were implicated. Who caught this Dong-go? Get rid of him immediately. Joseph ordered coldly. Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. Can't you even tame a dog? How dare you release such a mad dog? Don't let this mad dog die too easily. Do you understand? Borna sneered. A mere 9th-level Essence Soul Realm Dong-go dared to be so impudent in front of them, laughing and cursing without restraint. In Joseph and Borna's opinion, this Dong-go was unreasonable. He was purely a mad dog. They would be fools to argue with a mad dog. As for why the dog went mad, it was naturally because of them. Dong-go knew that he was going to die, so he no longer had any scruples. Therefore, he did as he pleased. However, Dong-go's thinking was too simple. Death was definitely not that easy. Damn Dong-go. The two with the curly blonde hair cursed. They had lost a lot of face this time. Dong-go, I will definitely make you wail until you die. The one with the curly blonde hair gritted his teeth. He had never expected this dog to be so disobedient. The other bald man was also unusually furious. To think that I even wanted to reward him with a piece of bone. The two of them went straight to Chu Yang. Most of the people from the Radiant God cult were watching the show with folded arms. Those who were like pigs and dogs were also watching the show. Among them, there were some who sympathized with Chu Yang and felt pity for Chu Yang, but that was only in their hearts. Dong-go, I will knock out your teeth one by one. I will beat your face full of blood and then break your limbs bit by bit. The one with the curly blonde hair rolled up his sleeves and was ready to fight. Then I'll cut open his stomach and dig out his intestines and internal organs bit by bit so that he can take a closer look. The bald man's words were even more savage. Your plan is very good. Chu Yang did not know how to deal with the two of them, but they made him feel enlightened. Clap, clap. He clapped his hands happily. Dong Go, you still dare to be so arrogant at this time. You are asking for a beating. Rumble. The golden-haired man stomped his foot on the ground, causing the ground to explode and dust to soar into the sky. He rushed towards Chu Yang, and his curly hair was pulled straight. His huge fist was wrapped in a dazzling light, and he smashed it towards Chu Yang. What a cool wind. The wind you created is not bad. Chu Yang clasped his hands behind his back and waited for the huge fist to come. He grabbed it with his left hand and exerted force. Catcher. The golden curly-haired fist was directly crushed. Broken bones, flesh, and blood splattered out. The entire arm crackled as all the bones were shattered. The blood-curdling screams shook the heavens. It was as if a knife had cut through a piece of paper, tearing apart the void. Cold sweat broke out all over his body as he knelt down. I'm sorry. Chu Yang threw his hand away. I got the order wrong. I apologize to you. I should have knocked out your teeth first before breaking your limbs. Bang, bang, bang. Chu Yang raised his hand and hit his mouth and face. Like a huge hammer, teeth flew out one by one, and his entire face was smashed. The sound was terrifying, causing one to tremble in fear. It was incomparably brutal. Catcher. Chu Yang attacked repeatedly, breaking and crushing the golden-haired man's 2 legs and the remaining arm. The golden-haired man was in so much pain that he kept howling on the ground. It's your turn. Quickly cut open my stomach and dig out my intestines and organs. Chu Yang smiled and looked at the other person, causing the other person to tremble. With a plop, he directly collapsed to the ground. Chapter 16:13. Thump, thump. Along with the sound of Chu Yang's footsteps, he had already appeared in front of this person. Come, come. Dig out my intestines. Dig out my internal organs and let me take a look. This man was petrified. He knew he had met a demon, an extremely intimidating one. Crack. Chu Yang directly tore off one of his arms and handed it to him. Here, I'll give you a bone. It's still warm with meat. Then, he sauntered to Joseph and Borna. Guys, the mad dog is here. Come here and butcher him. Joseph and Borna's pupils shrank. They had only one thought in their heads, pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. They had found the wrong person. They had encountered an expert who could be a peerless monster. Great sir, please don't mind my offense. Joseph clasped his fists. I didn't know your name. If I offended you, please forgive me. His attitude had changed abnormally fast. We're from the West. We've never met you before. That's why we offended you. Please forgive us. Since the situation was better than them, Borna couldn't help but smile flatteringly. So it's like that. Chu Yang rose his hand and a suction force burst out, dragging the enraged man of the radiant god cult who had been eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey. No matter how hard they tried to resist, it was useless. Chu Yang raised his hand and smashed that man's head. Then, he turned to Borna. Are those fireworks beautiful? Joseph's and Borna's smiles froze on their faces. Those beautiful fireworks were from Borna, and Joseph was the one who had lit them. At this moment, everything they had just done was returned to them. Good. Good kill. Damn Western pig. You only know how to bully the weak. If you have guts, you should try to bully the son of Absolute Beginnings Group. It's so satisfying. Western pig killed us like dogs, and we're going to kill them like pigs. Those who were like pigs and goats immediately became excited. However, there were still some people who were afraid that Chu Yang would not be a match for the other party. Thus, they were trembling in fear. Chu Yang glanced at them and said, "Look at your behavior. I'm too lazy to comment. You're being peed on, and you're wagging your tails and begging for mercy." Shua. The group of people's faces immediately turned red, especially when they saw those who were still trembling in fear. They were so ashamed that they couldn't show their faces. Your Excellency, you want to go against the divine radiant cult, don't you? You'd better think it through. After Joseph, Borna coldly said, "Your distinguished self is indeed very powerful, but that doesn't mean that you are a match for the two of us, and definitely not a match for our sign of light. I'm afraid that your distinguished self won't be able to bear the consequences." Chuyang felt that these two people were interesting. With just a few words of apology and a slight show of weakness, they wanted him to stop. He dared to guarantee that once he stopped, these two things would definitely find someone to rely on and settle the score with him. However, this was not what he cared about. "Listen, you two pigs mean that you can contact that bullshit sign of light, your distinguished self, you'd better show some respect." Hearing Chuyang humiliating the sign of light, Joseph's voice turned cold. Even if he wasn't the absolute beginning son, he wouldn't dare to do that. "That's right." Borna also sneered. "Your distinguished self, we just don't want to hurt our friendship. You should know what we mean, right?" Still not convinced, Chuyang smiled, clasping his hands behind his back as he looked at the two of them. "I said that the sign of light is bullshit. Is even worse than bullshit. What are you going to do about it? It seems that your distinguished self has chosen death. Blaspheming the sign of light is blaspheming the Lord. Your distinguished self, it's too late to regret now. Only death can redeem all your sins. Wang, 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 wang." The silver wings behind Joseph and Borna's back vibrated at a high frequency, making a buzzing sound. Surging holy aura, pure and dazzling light burst out, illuminating the heaven and earth. Chapter 16:14. Chuyang had never cared about the option of fighting, much less these two people. "You two have wings. I seem to have wings too." With a bang, Chuyang's angelic wings bloomed behind him. Suddenly, they burst out with a more dazzling and holy light. Not only that, but at the core of the angelic wings, there was a dazzling ball of light. It seemed to emit the light of the kingdom of heaven, and the sound of gospel resounded. Countless angels appeared within it. Chuyang's aura was even more noble and supreme. The lines of the angelic wings behind him were perfect, as if only the Creator could draw them out. Every structure was filled with endless mystery, as if it contained the supreme truth. It was indisputable and impossible to refute. When Joseph and Borna saw the angels' wings, they suddenly felt an extreme reverence from the depths of their hearts. They also felt a great pressure, to the extent that the radiance of the silver wings behind them instantly dimmed, and the pure and holy aura disappeared. What shocked them even more was that their silver wings actually darkened and turned black. They burst out with billowing demonic energy and an incomparably evil aura. "How is this possible? How is this possible? I have the blood of angels in me. How can I be suppressed by a mere dog? Impossible. How can his angelic wings be more noble and holy than mine? Mine are the real angelic wings." The two of them were in disbelief and panic. They could even hear the sound of their beliefs and beliefs collapsing. But in an instant, the two of them found a reason to support themselves. "Heretic, you have stolen the glory of the Lord. You deserve to die. The Lord will never forgive you." Chuyang was too lazy to pay attention to them. It was only natural. Their Lord of Light's 7 souls had to submit to him and obey the orders of the divine demon martial spirit. These two insignificant things were nothing. As for the shock of the two pigs, they were disdainful to explain. They only had contempt for the so-called Lord. The Lord says, "You have fallen. You have blasphemed the light, blasphemed the holiness, and blasphemed the righteousness." The Lord says, "Kneel, and the Lord will save you." The Lord also said, "Did you really contact the Son of Light?" Chuyang was thinking about how to use these Western pigs to find the sign of light. Kill. Angel's fist. The two of them suppressed the fear in their hearts and also resisted Chuyang's suppression. Their bodies once again erupted with a dazzling and holy light, and white flames burst forth from their bodies. Both of them punched towards Chuyang. It was the angel's fist that could only be used by angels. Light shone in all directions as the white flames burned everything. Angels were born for battle, and the angel's fist was even more so for battle. Its power was incomparably great. However, Chu Yang could not display the power of the angel's fist at all. To be exact, the two of them performing the angel's fist in front of him was simply displaying their slight skill in front of an expert. After all, Chu Yang could even create angels. In addition, Chu Yang was very disgusted when he heard Western names like Joseph and Borna in the God's world. Can't you be more normal with your names? Why do you have to make me feel uncomfortable? In my name, the Lord says the immeasurable deity and Amitabha. In the name of Western chicks, the Lord says you have sinned. In the name of the Lord, where are you, angel? Chu Yang spouted a bunch of nonsense. He stretched out his hand and flicked his fingers. In an instant, two angels rushed out and fought with the two of them. In a short while, the two of them were directly suppressed. Chapter 16:15. Dong-go had only created two angels, and they were no match for them. They even instinctively knelt down in front of the two angels, as if they were real angels. No, I'm afraid there's not much difference. The two of them were extremely frustrated. The two angels they were fighting were even nobler and more shocking than the angels they had seen before. The feeling they gave them was, they should be the first generation of angels. Girls, do you need me to teach you how to behave? Chu Yang was too lazy to make a move. He provoked the group of people who were captured. Don't you know that if you have a grudge, you should take revenge? Are you happy to let these Western pigs stand? Suddenly, the crowd was in chaos. Some people immediately rushed toward the people of the Divine Light religion. A great battle broke out. However, the difference in numbers was too great. In a short time, the people of the Divine Light religion were all defeated and forced to kneel on the ground. Among them, many were still incomparably arrogant. Chu Yang asked the crowd to push these people to the front. Then he said to Joseph and Borna, I'll ask you again. Can you contact the Pig of Light? You want to find the Son of Light. The two were surprised and looked at Chu Yang in surprise. Answer my question. Chu Yang was very domineering. I won't say it a second time, understand? The two were humiliated, but they didn't dare to lose their temper. Can you contact the Pig of Light? Chu Yang asked again. Yes. Then quickly contact him. Chu Yang was overjoyed. Don't tell me that the Pig of Light doesn't care about the lives of pigs like you. Joseph and Borna had mixed feelings. They were worried that Dong-go would stop them and not give them a chance to send a message to the Son of Light. However, this was the other party's real purpose. However, they couldn't help but be angry. The other party was too arrogant. He didn't even put their Son of Light in his eyes. You'd better not regret it. When the Son of Light comes, it'll be the time of your death. Slap. Chu Yang slapped them twice. He slapped them so hard that they became dizzy. Only then did he say coldly, I told you to mess around. Are you not going to do anything serious? Contacting the Scion of Light was the most important matter. Joseph and Borna found out that the other side was already impatient to fight the Scion of Light. Eastern Dog, are you waiting to die? The Scion of Light will definitely let you know what terror is. The two of them roared inwardly, but had no choice but to follow orders, immediately contacting the Scion of Light. Contacting the Scion of Light was what they hoped for, but at this moment, they didn't feel the slightest bit of joy, because the other party was looking forward to it even more than the two of them. Listen up, woman, Chu Yang said to everyone, kill a pig for me every once in a while. Start with the disobedient pigs. Otherwise, our Pig of Light won't be fast enough. Pa. Immediately, one of them attacked and smashed his head. Then, he glared at Chu Yang and roared, I'm not a girl. After that, he sneered at Joseph and Borna. Gentlemen, are the fireworks beautiful? Pa. 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 Sounds of explosions rang out unceasingly. Heads were smashed one after another. Even more people roared, I'm not a girl either. Even if I die, it'll just be a scar the size of a bowl. Hee hee. Chu Yang was happy to see this. A little bit of bravery was better than no bravery at all. He didn't make another sound. Joseph and Borna's faces were deathly pale, without a trace of blood. They killed the other party like dogs, and the other party killed them like pigs. However, in terms of reason, they were in the wrong. They attacked first and forced the other party to be cannon fodder. Chapter 16:16. After that, all they had to do was wait. They didn't have to wait for long. Soon, a dazzling light burst out from afar, and an oppressive voice rumbled over, "Joseph, Borna, you better have a good reason. Otherwise, you should know the consequences of wasting my time." Rumble. Like a big sun, he arrived in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, he saw all the people of the radiant god cult kneeling on the field. Some of them were even dead, and their brains and blood were all over the ground. His pupils shrank abruptly. Immediately, he roared, "Damn it, all of you Eastern dogs deserve to die." The terrifying aura of the Son of Light burst out. In an instant, many people present were like mice that saw a cat, trembling in fear. Even those who shouted that they weren't women were the same at this moment. In the field, only Chu Yang was indifferent. The corners of his mouth curved into a cold smile, and he coldly looked at the incomparably savage Son of Light. "The Son of Light is here. Eastern Dog, your end is here. You will die without a doubt. Eastern Dog, you are so stupid that you let us contact the Son of Light. If you don't die, the Lord won't allow it. Ha ha." Joseph and Frank laughed wildly. They stood up from the ground and pointed at Chu Yang. They were venting the anger and grievance in their hearts, as well as the endless humiliation they had suffered. Buzz. The pressure of the Son of Light instantly fell on Chu Yang. Suddenly, the whole sky seemed to be pressing down on Chu Yang. "Eastern Dog, kneel for me." Nothing happened. How could mere pressure do anything to Chu Yang? He solved the first problem first, and then said to Joseph and Borna, "Did I let you two stand up?" With two kai-kai sounds, Chu Yang raised his hand and flicked his fingers. A string of bullets split into two and pierced through the two men's knees. With two dong sounds, the two men once again knelt heavily on the ground, screaming miserably. At this time, he looked at the Son of Light. "I say, can you put away these boring tricks? They are used to scare children." The Scion of Light narrowed his eyes. He had already sensed that the other party was extraordinary. His opponent's calmness, mockery, and confidence clearly told him that his opponent was not the least bit afraid of him. As he spoke, Chu Yang used the walk of gods and demons to transform into the appearance he had when he first met the Scion of Light. He then sneered, "Western pig, do you still recognize me? It's you." The Scion of Light immediately roared, "Eastern Dog, there was a path to heaven but you didn't take it. There was no door to hell but you came knocking on my door. Today, I will take revenge for the enmity of that day and vent my hatred." His roar shook the heavens, shaking the surroundings. The Scion of Light's face was distorted and incomparably malevolent. The veins on his face were throbbing, and his teeth were clenched so hard that the veins on his neck were visible. For the past 4 days, whenever he thought of the humiliation he had suffered that day, he would slap himself, curse himself, and blame himself. The humiliation and regret were like two hands that constantly tore at his self-esteem and pride, constantly tormenting every nerve in his body. At this moment, when he saw Chu Yang again, his eyes turned red, and he was completely hysterical. Everyone couldn't help but be stunned. It was actually the person who slapped the Scion of Light and the Scion of Underworld, cursed the lunar overlord, and belittled the source state. No wonder he was so playful just now. No wonder he didn't put the holy light cult in his eyes at all. No wonder he was looking forward to the arrival of the Scion of Light. Chapter 16:17. The Scion of Light was furious, but Chu Yang was even more furious. Being slapped for no reason at all, he felt extremely stifled. "White pig, seeing you like this makes me even angrier," Chu Yang said. "Do you know, I clearly suffered a great loss, but you are acting like you are very angry in front of me. Did he come to take revenge on me?" Suddenly, the furious Scion of Light was startled. His eyes couldn't help but fix on Chu Yang's body, wanting to see 2 holes in Chu Yang's body. However, the other side was like an abyss. As soon as his gaze fell on him, it was immediately drowned in a boundless sea. Thinking back to that day, when he actually felt reverence for Dong Go from the bottom of his heart, as well as the scene of Dong Go slapping him and the Scion of Ming, he shivered again. This Dong Go probably had a great secret on him, and was definitely not as simple as he seemed. The Scion of Light wouldn't make the same mistake twice, so he didn't look down on Chuyang again. Because of his fear, his anger was quickly suppressed, and he became incomparably calm. When he saw the other side's calm and collected demeanor, he immediately provoked him. "I slapped you once. I slapped you 3 times. I was tyrannical. You were tyrannical, and you swallowed your teeth." The Scion of Light was directly defeated. When it came to swallowing his teeth, he lost. Although he was the one who made the first move, he paid a disastrous price and suffered a great loss. "Continue." Chuyang directly said, "You are extremely hypocritical, wanting to save face. How does it feel to swallow your own teeth 3 times? Competing in psychological warfare, in provocation, in inciting the other side's anger, in disrupting the other side's rhythm, Chuyang had nothing to fear." The Scion of Light said in a gloomy voice, "Dong-go, do you not want to die fast enough?" This was an admission. Whether it was the radiant god cult or the others present, they were all stupefied. There was actually such an inside story on that day. Especially Joseph and Borna. In their hearts, the Scion of Light was invincible, and glorious. However, at this moment, the Scion of Light, that flawless image, shockingly showed a flaw in their hearts, and even a great crack appeared. "White pig, aren't you afraid of biting your tongue?" Chuyang assessed the other's competence. After confirming that the other had only incipient God Realm cultivation base, he didn't need to worry anymore. Incipient God Realm was just 1 realm higher than him. No one could be his match. Thus, Chuyang dared to say that. "That day, if I didn't have scruples, would you have succeeded?" The Scion of Light pointed at Chuyang from midair. Following his movement, a ray of light fell on Chuyang's forehead. "Wild dog, I will slaughter you today." The sound shook the heavens, and when it entered the ears, it was so deafening that even the deaf could hear it. The Scion of Light was also incomparably confident. Even though he felt threatened by Chuyang, he was still confident that he was invincible. "You have misgivings, but I don't." Chuyang sneered coldly. "White pig, I don't even care about the absolute beginning ruler. Who do you think you are? You dare to clamor in front of me. In your words, you don't want to die fast enough. Eastern dog, let me see how capable you are after all." Noiselessly, with the Scion of Light as the center, a formless wave appeared in the void, stirring it up like the surface of the sea, undulating up and down. The incomparably holy light bloomed from his body, entering the void and illuminating everything behind it. Vaguely, it looked like a big holy sun was rising in the void. It was dead silent everywhere. Whether it was people on the scene or the creatures in the starting ground, they all felt an inexplicable aura, which made them restless and fearful. They felt like their king was enraged, and his murderous aura was torrential. Chapter 16-18. Chuyang sensed the aura released by the Scion of Light, as well as the extremely dazzling radiance. His fighting spirit soared, and he wanted to comprehend the way of light quickly. Fighting the Scion of Light was definitely a fast track. The Scion of Light definitely had his own profound comprehension of the way of light, and would definitely display it vividly in a fierce battle. Chuyang could observe it, and even trigger his great comprehension. Chuyang's desire to vent his hatred was one of the reasons, but this was actually the most important reason. "You little thing, why don't you make your move?" His killing intent and fighting spirit soared. Chuyang was like an unsheathed divine sword. His temperament suddenly changed, becoming extremely sharp. The aura he released was definitely not inferior to the Scion of Light's in the slightest. The auras of the two clashed together, as if 2 giant beasts were wrestling, making everyone present shudder with fear. "No way, Dong-go is comparable to the Scion of Light." Joseph and Borna's hearts skipped a beat. The Lord said, "Let there be light," and so there is light. The Scion of Light's voice was full of piety, as if he was praying. As his voice fell, it was as if his words were the law. The heaven and earth suddenly erupted with boundless radiance, blazing brilliance. However, the strange thing was that there was a place that was incomparably dark. Although the surroundings were extremely dazzling, there was not the slightest trace of light. It was pitch black, and one couldn't even see their own fingers. That was Chu Yang's location. At that moment, Chu Yang's figure was completely engulfed by the darkness, and not the slightest trace of him could be seen. That place was like a black hole, and he seemed to have been swallowed by the black hole. It was as if he had been exiled to the endless universe, drowned by the endless darkness of the universe. Interesting. The instant Chu Yang's eyes lost their light, he couldn't feel anything apart from darkness. He sank into the endless darkness. Not only his eyes, but his entire consciousness also sank into the darkness. However, he didn't panic in the slightest, and even smiled. To him, this was the best time to comprehend the way of darkness. This feeling only lasted for an instant. Chu Yang comprehended the way of darkness, and immediately became the king of the night. The night was under his control in the blink of an eye. The darkness was like water, and he was like a fish. He had a clear understanding of his surroundings. He was like an assassin in a dark corner, waiting to deliver a fatal blow. He was like a ghost in the rolling mortal world, blending in with the crowd of living beings, and no one noticed him. Darkness is a different space where only I exist. Darkness is soundless, formless, and colorless, making it impossible for anyone to detect. Darkness is the best defense, darkness is the devouring. Chu Yang's mind quickly gave birth to many understandings of darkness. Several kinds of related principles were faintly about to be formed. One of his thoughts was to comprehend the darkness while the other was to comprehend the light. This couldn't be any easier for him. After all, he could create 4 clones at any time. It couldn't be any easier for him to multitask. Light, not only can it bestow light to others, it can also deprive others of their light, or it can completely abandon that person. Of abandon of light of light of light. Chapter 16:19. Because of his divine devil martial spirit, his accumulation of light and darkness was incomparably vigorous. It was just that his comprehension wasn't that deep. Now, it was as if he had pierced through a layer of window paper, and he suddenly saw the light. He also recalled the blind bullet from his previous life, which could similarly blind people. His rule of light had a new kind of change. The Lord said, "Let there be light," and so there is light. In the darkness, Chu Yang's voice suddenly echoed, surprising everyone. Even in the endless darkness, he wasn't affected in the slightest. In addition, his words were almost the same as the Scion of Lights, making them completely confused. They were bewildered. Could it be that this rampant guy wants to compete with the Scion of Light in terms of light techniques? They were extremely shocked, bewildered. Chu Yang's voice didn't have the same extreme piety as the Scion of Light, but instead sounded incomparably languid and casual. Merely, the changes that occurred were extremely astonishing. Rumble. Suddenly, a burst of light exploded, and the light in the world became even more dazzling, even more blazing. Everyone immediately lost their sight, and their eyes were filled with a vast expanse of whiteness. They couldn't see anything, and didn't know what was happening. The Scion of Light also lost his sight in that split second, and his consciousness couldn't perceive anything. Everything was covered by the vast expanse of whiteness. As expected, he has a great secret. The Scion of Light wasn't too surprised. His previous reverence for Chu Yang wasn't without reason, and the facts proved that this was indeed the case. Eastern Dog's comprehension of light was astonishing. Eastern Dog, every comprehension of light is blasphemy against the Lord. Light belongs only to the Lord, and only to the Lord's followers. You intercepted the secret of light without permission, and must die. After a short time, the darkness and light disappeared at the same time, and the world returned to normal. Chu Yang and the Scion of Light confronted each other. The Scion of Light coldly spoke, his killing intent hard to conceal. He. Chu Yang chuckled, "Light indeed belongs only to me." Another exchange of words, and the Scion of Light was once again defeated. Chu Yang actually arrogantly called himself the Lord. To the Scion of Light, anger was a luxury right now. Someone had blasphemed his Lord, disrespecting his Lord. His first reaction wasn't to get angry, but to immediately eliminate the heretic. Therefore, he had no time to be angry. Joseph, Borna, and all the people of the Radiant God cult were also enraged. Since they had blasphemed their Lord, no one could live, because the Lord was their everything and their belief. The Lord says, justice. With light, darkness will be dispelled, evil will no longer exist, and justice will descend. The Scion of Light seemed to have transformed into a master, into a heavenly law. There wasn't the slightest trace of emotion in his voice, but it was as if the heavenly law was giving off a majestic sound. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The heaven and earth buzzed as a strange power surged out from the void. It was extremely majestic. The space Chu Yang was in was fiercely squeezed and rapidly deformed. His entire body was almost squeezed into another world. That power wanted to completely crush him, obliterate him, and completely erase him. Not only that, countless living beings appeared from the heaven and earth, and all of them pounced on him. In an instant, Chu Yang felt betrayed by everyone, condemned by everyone, and spurned by tens of thousands. He was completely abandoned by the heaven and earth, and had nowhere to rely on, nowhere to place himself. Light of justice? Chu Yang was slightly surprised. The law of light could actually be used in such a way. It was somewhat similar to the heavenly spirit world's ability to control heaven and earth, and the myriad gods world's ability to connect heaven and earth, but the power was completely different. If you are righteous, then I am evil. Chapter 1620. Chu Yang knew the reason. It was because of his own comprehension, the demon martial spirit, and more importantly, his Tai Chi technique. Light and darkness were like yin and yang. When the light principle appeared, the dark principle appeared. If the Son of Light knew that he had helped Chu Yang in his cultivation, he would be so angry that he would vomit blood. He would be even more desperate. Dong dog, let's see if you will die this time. Ignorant. Do you think you can compare to the Son of Light? Chu Yang didn't care about the space's compression, and he focused wholeheartedly on comprehending the laws of light and darkness. His body was severely distorted, and the sound of bones breaking could be heard. His muscles were crushed, and his flesh and blood splattered everywhere. His white bones could be seen everywhere. Joseph and Borna were delighted when they saw this, and they couldn't stop laughing. The Lord of Blasphemy will be destroyed in the end. The Lord is omnipotent. The Lord is supreme. Heresy can only die. The radiant god cult's people also cheered. On the other hand, the other side was pale. Their pupils were trembling. They were frightened to the extreme. If Chu Yang was defeated, the radiant god cult would take revenge on them. However, in the midst of the divine radiant cult's laughter, Chu Yang was like a small boat in a stormy sea. He was about to be destroyed, but he was still safe and sound. He was moving up and down in the stormy sea. He even had a vague feeling that he was playing with the stormy sea. The radiant god cult's people stopped laughing. Their faces stiffened. What's going on? Why isn't the Dong dog dead yet? The radiant god cult's people were flustered. Heresy will be erased like dirt. It's just a matter of time. Facing the bewilderment of the radiant god cult's people, Joseph and Frank weren't so sure. They were so guilty. The two of them also gradually realized that something was wrong, and their hands had started to tremble unknowingly. The Son of Light looked at Chu Yang's distorted body. His pupils shrank. In the past, when he used his principles, even the gods' chosen ones couldn't resist. Even those who were 2 realms higher than him would be severely injured. Some would even die. The Lord says, justice. With light, darkness will be dispelled, evil will no longer exist, and justice will descend. Chu Yang grimaced in pain, but he revealed his white teeth and smiled. His voice was filled with the joy of understanding. Because of his martial soul, light and darkness were his forte. Comprehending them was as easy as running across a wide expanse of flat land. There were no obstacles at all. Comprehending the laws was almost a matter of course. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Just as he finished his words, the space where the Scion of Light was located immediately deformed, as if squeezed by a giant's hand. Under the immense pressure, cracking sounds rang out continuously. The Scion of Light's body was just like Chu Yang's, quickly deformed. His bones were broken one after another, exposing his pale white bones. His flesh was also crushed like a biscuit, and blood spurted out unceasingly. In just an instant, he was as miserable as Chu Yang was. He, Chu Yang laughed and provoked, "Western pig, if we're talking about misery, you won't lose to me." Saying this, he gave the Scion of Light a thumbs up. "I'll give you a compliment. I hope you can keep up the good work." His moves and attacks were just like the Scion of Light's. Even the Dong Dog was slightly better than the Scion of Light. Chapter 1621. Impossible. How is this possible? Joseph's whole body trembled. He had completely forgotten how loud and happy he was laughing just now. However, the scene in front of him was really hard to believe. East Dog had actually cast a spell similar to that of the Scion of Light. He was not so shocked for no reason. The light technique that the Son of Light had just used was the supreme secret light technique from the Divine Tome of Light. Every secret technique in the Divine Tome of Light was not only extremely shocking, but also the supreme secret of the Divine Light cult. Ordinary people could not come into contact with it at all. For someone like Joseph, even if he had the bloodline of the Angel clan, let alone using it, he had never even seen such a secret technique. However, the Dongo in front of him had actually used it so easily. How could he not be shocked? Illusion. This must be an illusion. Borna could not believe that everything in front of him was real. Could it be that the supreme secret of the Divine Light cult was so easy to leak out? Even if it was leaked out, it would be extremely difficult to comprehend it. Why couldn't he be the Son of Light? Why couldn't it be anyone else? It must be the Son of Light in front of him. The main reason was that the Son of Light had learned the supreme secret technique from the Divine Tome of Light. He was extremely talented, so he became the Son of Light of the Divine Light cult. The Son of Light could be said to be one in a million. During this period, he had to go through countless cruel competitions and step on piles of bones before he finally set foot on such an extremely glorious position. The rest of the people in the Divine Light cult were all stunned at this moment. They could not help but ask themselves in their hearts, is this a battle for the position of the Son of Light in the Divine Light cult? Not to mention the people in the Divine Light cult, even the other spectators were shocked at this scene. They felt extremely surprised. The rampant person in their eyes was actually using the light technique that he was best at to deal with his opponent. The Divine Light cult relied on the Tao of Light to win a great reputation in the divine world. They became a colossus, a supreme holy cult that had been passed down for eternity and never declined. They were best at the Tao of Light. In the Tao of Light, no one in the entire divine world could be compared to them. Therefore, competing with the Radiant God cult in calligraphy of the Light Tao was tantamount to courting death. The Scion of Light looked coldly at Chu Yang, his pupils shrinking to the size of pinholes. This time, he was truly shocked. The other party was like a mirror image, and actually returned the light technique that he had used without missing a single bit. "How did you do it?" The Scion of Light wanted to ask, but didn't dare to. It wasn't because he was afraid that the other side wouldn't answer, but because he was afraid that the other side would say something so terrifying that he wouldn't even be able to keep his position as the Scion of Light. After all, he had once felt great reverence towards Chu Yang from the bottom of his heart. Thus, after thinking about it, he could only forcefully suppress the doubts in his heart. Judgment. At this moment, the Scion of Light felt a great sense of crisis, and even some panic. This feeling was as if his beloved woman was about to fall in love with someone else and was about to leave him. A great sense of crisis arose in his heart. In order to become the Scion of Light, he had gone through untold hardships and experienced all kinds of cruelty to reach his current position. No matter what, he wouldn't allow anyone to push him down. He couldn't wait to behead Chu Yang. When he made his move, the power he erupted with was incomparably astonishing. Inexhaustible dazzling rays of light burst forth between heaven and earth. In the center of the light, a divine spear of light rapidly took shape. The spear tip fell in midair, and the void was easily pierced through as if it were a piece of paper. The light beam that was shot out also cut the void apart. That was the light beam of judgment, and more importantly, the light beam of destruction. Chapter 1622. Clang clang clang. From the void, Chains of light emitted metallic sounds as they rushed out with sharp whistling sounds, locking onto Chu Yang. They even wanted to pierce through his shoulder blades, locking onto his legs and hands. Buzz, buzz, buzz. As the void vibrated, sacred syllables sounded from the void. Although the voice was not very loud, it reverberated through the heavens and earth. Then, at the end of the divine spear of light, a solemn and magnificent hall appeared. One by one, figures of light appeared and sat down in an orderly manner. When the supreme light figure sat down on the main seat, the world suddenly shook again. Then, the world seemed to be completely frozen. In an instant, the world became silent. It was incomparably silent. A sacred and dignified aura endlessly pervaded the air. Divine Light Court. The Scion of Light has actually grasped this supreme profound. Joseph and the others of the Radiant God cult were dumbstruck, looking at the big hall. Soon after, every single one of them knelt down piously, chanting pious scriptures from their mouths, becoming incomparably solemn. The rest of the spectators were also intimidated by the Divine Light Court. They began to tremble and could not help but all kneel down. Divine Light Court. When Chu Yang saw everyone's reaction, he was slightly puzzled. He had many strange feelings in his heart, but he did not feel a sense of crisis. Instead, he felt incomparably close, and even had the feeling of entering a court in his previous life. Is the so-called Divine Light Court really so terrifying? Is there a need to do this? He muttered to himself. The spear of light was something he had been able to condense a long time ago. It also contained the intent of judgment, but it wasn't as grand and solemn as the Scion of Light. Then let me see how the spear of light and the judgment of light are different from mine. Chu Yang did not resist, allowing the chains of light to pierce through his shoulder blades and lock onto his hands and feet. However, just as the light chains entered his body, his devil soul and light soul throbbed, startling Chu Yang so much that he immediately suppressed them. Even so, the light chain in his body was on the verge of shattering. After that, the pressure on the light chain dissipated in an instant. It was like a puppy's tail, wagging gently to please. Only to this extent. Chu Yang was greatly disappointed. The judgment of light. The Scion of Light sees himself as the protector of heaven and earth, as well as the protector of order. What about the opposing darkness? After thinking for a while, he slightly released the suppression on the devil soul. Immediately, spiritual energy surged and the three laws of darkness, chaos, slaughter, and carefree were formed. At this moment, Chu Yang had a deeper understanding of how he could comprehend the laws of darkness and light so quickly, the darkness devil emperor and the ruler of light. Apart from his fiend god martial spirit, these two were also extremely important reasons. Although the darkness demon emperor and the light sovereign had died long ago and didn't leave behind any half-dead wills, their seven soul origins still contained their Tao. Chu Yang had refined their seven soul origins, which was equivalent to learning and comprehending their Tao invisibly. It was just that he didn't realize it himself, and only now did he realize it. After that, he also released the suppression on the light soul, and the three laws of light judgment, order, and restraint were formed instantly. All these happened in an instant. All kinds of wonderful things kept surging in his mind, intoxicating him, as if he was living in a drunken stupor. To be more precise, how could one live a life of drunken stupor? How could one compare to even 1/10,000th of it? This was the comprehension of the Tao. Chapter 1623. What was going on? The Divine Light Court had appeared, and Dong Go was being judged. How could this happen? The people of the Divine Light cult couldn't help but stop praying and look at Chu Yang in astonishment. Was this a trial, or was he enjoying endless gentleness in a land of tenderness? Those who were afraid of the Divine Light Court and knelt on the ground were also completely confused. No matter how they looked at the rampant scene, they seemed to be incomparably intoxicated and couldn't even extricate themselves. Damn it, what exactly has this bastard mastered? The Son of Light was completely horrified. The judgment of light was so shocking. Who could be like this under the judgment of light? From this, he also concluded that the secret of Dong Go was definitely related to the Divine Light cult. He even faintly feared that he might not be able to keep his position as the Son of Light. Bastard, go to hell. The Son of Light's face was ferocious. He grabbed the Spear of Judgment and fiercely threw it at Chu Yang. With a whoosh, the Spear of Judgment almost turned into a ray of light. A ray of light of judgment judged all the evils in the world, returning heaven and earth to a clear world. Woo-woo. There was the sound of a spatial storm. Wherever the Spear of Judgment passed, the void was cut open. It turns out that the Judgment of Light can have such power and such a domineering aura. Why didn't I notice it earlier? Chu Yang was overjoyed. His eyes lit up, because this could be used to fool all kinds of naive and innocent people. Although he was distracted and his mind was filled with all sorts of thoughts, his movements were not slow. Judgment of Light. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The world shook, and the void hummed. Suddenly, a supreme figure appeared behind Chu Yang. He was thousands of feet tall and rose from the ground. He was in a world of endless light. Endless gospel was spreading, countless angels were flying around him, and countless gods were kowtowing to him. Every ray of light emitted from the 10,000-meter-tall figure was hope, fairness, justice, truth, and supreme judgment. Rumble. His silhouette suddenly moved, and the entire void rumbled, bursting with endless light. The divine spear of light that was 10,000 feet long appeared in his hand. The seemingly slow movements of the 3,000-meter-tall figure were actually extremely fast. Before the Scion of Light's judgment could reach him, the 3,000-meter-tall figure had already thrust his spear forward. With a light bang, the Scion of Light's judgment shattered like an egg hitting a rock, turning into specks of light that scattered down. Clang, clang, clang. Chains of light shot out one after another, locking the Scion of Light's hands and feet. When they pierced through his shoulder blades, blood and flesh splattered everywhere, and with a sizzling sound, the pure white flames burnt his flesh to a crisp. What was strange was that it was not the smell of burnt meat, but a strange fragrance, as if it was a divine fragrance. Kai. The 3,000-meter-long spear of judgment directly stopped at the throat of the Scion of Light as if it had teleported. But the Scion of Light didn't react in the slightest, only looking dumbstruck at the 3,000-meter-tall figure behind Chu Yang, shivering like a sieve. Ma! 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 The Scion of Light unconsciously let out a cry of extreme fear. Chu Yang frowned, thinking, it's over just like that. This isn't good, right? I still haven't completely comprehended the laws of light and darkness. Chapter 1624. Can you be any stronger? Those who reacted at this time and heard Chu Yang's words really didn't know what words to use to describe Chu Yang. None of the creatures in the world could bear such a person. It was useless. The Scion of Light was still in a daze. Chu Yang was furious. What could he do if such a provocation was useless? Slow down, slow down. If I slap him to death, then there's really no chance. Although I'm not in a good mood to endure it. He quickly stopped his attack and used his lips because he really didn't know what to say. He just spoke randomly, Scion of Darkness, how do you feel? In the end, darkness can't defeat light. Since ancient times, evil won't prevail over good. Repent and be saved. Don't be obstinate. After saying this, he felt pretty good. He was very talented. First, he provoked and provoked with words. The other reason was that he had a wicked sense of humor. In front of the radiant god cult's people, acting as a swindler, if he succeeded, he would feel that it would be very interesting. Everything went smoothly, but Chu Yang felt that it wasn't easy for him. How was he here to take revenge? He was simply here to be a grandson. However, the Scion of Light didn't react in the slightest. His eyes were lifeless and lifeless. Bang! On the other hand, the spectators were greatly shocked. The Scion of Light was actually the Scion of Darkness. Chu Yang's nonsense was simply earth-shattering to them, especially the radiant god cult's people. But was this possible? Afterwards, the radiant god cult's people, such as Joseph and Frank, couldn't believe it. They felt that this was absolutely shocking slander. Chu Yang didn't care about the crowd's reaction. What he cared about was the Scion of Light. At this moment, he felt as if he was facing a devilish child. He hated Iron for not living up to his expectations. He really wanted to go over and give the Scion of Light a big slap. He cursed in his heart, "You little thing, why are you in a daze? Quickly come back to your senses and jump up." Afterwards, Chu Yang was really anxious, but there was nothing he could do. He could only slander him again and continue talking nonsense. "Do you know why I let you become the Scion of Light even though I knew you were the Scion of Darkness? Because only when I let you see the light and understand the light, will you wake up." The Scion of Light suddenly came back to his senses, but upon hearing such ridiculous words, he was once again stunned. He wondered if he was hallucinating. He was the Son of Darkness. How could he not know that? However, as soon as he saw some people of the Radiant God cult, he couldn't help but ask, "Are you pigs? How could you believe that?" The Scion of Light was really in a mess. He actually encountered such a miraculous thing. "Dongo, are you trying to say that you are the Son of Light?" The Scion of Light was truly infuriated, and did his best to mock and make sarcastic remarks. "Can you be any more preposterous, any more ridiculous? I'm waiting." Finally, there was a reaction. It wasn't easy. When Chu Yang wiped his forehead, he was actually wiping his sweat. Although there was no sweat on his forehead, his heart was full of sweat. Sigh. After that, he let out a long sigh. "Son of Darkness, you can deceive the heavens, the earth, and everyone else, but can you deceive yourself? Why bother, why bother?" Continue. Chapter 1625. I'm just trying to make you stronger, aren't I? Looking at you just now, I was really worried that you would break down. Chu Yang spoke bluntly. Then, without any warning, he forced himself up and summoned the Son of Light. "Come, Son of Darkness, come to the embrace of light, to the embrace of the Lord. The Lord is merciful, he will forgive all your sins and redeem you." Ha ha. The Son of Light was so angry that he laughed. He was almost mad. What kind of contempt was this? This had nothing to do with being a weirdo or ridiculous, it was only related to humiliation. When did he fall to the point where he had to worry about his enemy? "Bastard, you call yourself the Son of Light, representing light and the Lord, but I ask you to take a look at your virtue first." In his fury, the Son of Light pointed at Chu Yang. He gritted his teeth and said word by word, "You are. You. Only. Eastern. Dog. Is this enough? Eastern. Dog." He roared the last sentence at the top of his lungs. Many people suddenly felt sympathy for the Son of Light. It was really sad to meet such an opponent. If he didn't get beaten to death, he would be angered to death. However, these feelings disappeared in an instant, all awakened by the Son of Light's roar. It was absolutely impossible for the Radiant God cult to choose an Eastern dog as the Son of Light, and this was known to the world. This point was pointed out. Chu Yang's words became a big lie. Boom. The people of the Radiant God cult exploded in an instant, and then they all cursed. That's right, it's absolutely impossible for an Eastern dog to become the Son of Light. Eastern dog, you think it's useful to say it like it's true? You're blind. Eastern dog, you killed so many people of the Radiant God cult, but you still call yourself the Son of Light. Don't you think it's ridiculous? To be able to lie to such an extent, to such a ridiculous extent, and to such a bizarre extent, I'm afraid only the East dog can do it. If an Eastern dog like you can become the Son of Light, then everyone can be the Son of Light. The Radiant God cult hasn't fallen to such a point, and will never fall to such a low point. The Radiant God cult was enraged. They were all enraged by Chu Yang. Dongo actually treated all of them as fools and spouted nonsense the moment he opened his mouth. However, they almost believed him just now. This was because Dongo's radiant art was too shocking. It was even purer and more sacred than their Scion of Light. However, no matter what, they wouldn't act like this, to be so laughable, to be toyed with like this by their enemy. Thus, all of their faces burned, and they were even more infuriated. The Scion of Light laughed coldly. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. It was just a short moment of absent-mindedness, and he was humiliated by Dongo. Dongo, speak. Go on, I want to see how you're going to turn the false into the truth and black into white. Let me see how stupid you can be. With that last sentence, the Scion of Light let out another roar. Hihi, I don't have a choice. I'm really worried that you'll break down, my child. In the future, no matter what happens, you have to be strong. Chu Yang rubbed his nose. It was a skill to be able to make people so angry. You. The Scion of Light almost fainted from anger. Dongo, you're crazy. Kill this dog, we must kill this Dongo. If Dongo doesn't die, the heavens won't tolerate it. The Radiant God cult can be defeated, but when have we been humiliated like this? Again and again, the people of the Radiant God cult were filled with righteous indignation and clamoring. They were really furious. Chapter 1626. I've improved again. Chu Yang didn't care about the shouting and killing at all. Then, he began to anger them again, forcibly admitting that they didn't understand the profound meaning in his words. Is it so difficult to understand? He stuck out his tongue. I'm talking about my poisonous tongue. Bastard, he really thinks we're retarded. Joseph and Borna were fuming with anger. They couldn't wait to bite Chu Yang to death. The Son of Light's face was twisted. He was going to kill Dongo even if he had to risk his life. Chu Yang looked at their hatred, looked at their anger, and looked at them gnashing their teeth. He felt very comfortable in his heart. He had returned the slap to the Son of Light twice as much. However, he was a little dissatisfied. Wouldn't it affect his future acting as a fraud? Chu Yang repeated his words and thought for a while. A strange smile appeared on his face. He thought to himself, it's impossible for an Easterner to become the Son of Light of the Western God sect. Is this flaw very difficult to crack? He prepared for a while and sighed heavily. Sigh, looking at you now, I'm really sad. Where's the Lord's mercy? Where's the Lord's tolerance? Did the Lord ask you to be so calculative? I only gave it a try, and the answer I got was so shocking that I didn't know what to do. Chu Yang's sudden sadness made everyone unable to restrain their gazes from falling on Chu Yang's body. Son of Darkness. Chu Yang observed the scene and suddenly roared with the lion's roar, what is light? Then, he pointed at the people of the Radiant God sect one by one. And you, all of you. Tell me, what is light? This roar stunned everyone. What was he trying to do? Who didn't know he was talking nonsense? Chu Yang ignored everything and was immersed in his personal performance. He said to the Scion of Light, Scion of Darkness, what kind of light profound did you use just now? Was it light, was it justice, or was it judgment of evil? Apart from these, hope, universal love, redemption, and so on are also profound truths of light. I just proved that if your heart doesn't belong to the light, even if you understand the light, you won't be able to comprehend the true meaning of the light. The Scion of Light roared, light is not something a dog like you can comment on. Do you understand, dog? He loathed Chu Yang to the extreme, and then said in an incomparably cold voice, do you really think that you have already surpassed me in the path of light? Chu Yang wanted to act like a swindler, so how could he be in a hurry to make a move? He ignored the Scion of Light and looked at the sky with his hands behind his back. He muttered to himself, there is no such thing as an Eastern dog or a Western pig in this world. As the Scion of Light, the reason why I am from the East and not the West is because of the Lord's will. The will of the Lord. Ha ha. The whole place mocked and burst into laughter, especially Joseph and Borna, who laughed the loudest and most sarcastically. Chu Yang ignored them all and looked at the people of the Radiant God cult with compassion. The Lord said fairness, so how can there be discrimination? How can there be such things as an Eastern dog or a Western pig? The Lord said that all living things are equal, and this is how you treat all living things. Gah! All of a sudden, Joseph and Borna's laughter stopped abruptly. The whole place was silent, especially the people of the Radiant God cult. Is this how you revere the Lord you speak of? Is this how you blaspheme the Lord in the name of the Lord? Is your Lord so narrow-minded, or do you want to smear his name? Chu Yang looked at the silent crowd, and his face began to glow. He used the cultivation of light to make his aura incomparably holy, and said again, the Lord made me an Eastern to wake you up, to save you. The Radiant God cult is rotten to the core, and has completely disobeyed the Lord's will. Darkness and evil have silently invaded the radiant god cult. After a pause, he looked at the Scion of Light with his glowing face and said, "Take him for example, the Scion of Darkness and Darkness. As the second prince, he has become the Scion of Light." How ironic, sigh. He heaved another heavy sigh, pounding on the hearts of the radiant god cult's people. The Son of Light was surprised to find that the radiant god cult's people had distanced themselves from him, looking at him with vigilance. Chapter 16:27. Preposterous, truly preposterous. The Scion of Light had lived for a long time, but he didn't say anything to reprimand the people of the radiant god cult. The world was full of fools, and it was useless to say more. As for Chu Yang's weirdo, he was too lazy to say another word. To him, that was simply the stupidest thing. At this time, there was only one way to solve the problem, and only one thing that was useful: his fist. His fist could make the weirdo Dong go not a weirdo at all. Swish. The Scion of Light punched Chu Yang. He was like light, and so was his fist. It was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it was over. Bang. Although Chu Yang had been guarding against it, it was of no use at all. His chest collapsed as if he had been punched by light. With a puff, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground, creating a big hole. The pain made his body convulse uncontrollably. Dong Go, how does it feel to be punched by light? The Scion of Light was high up in the air, looking down at Chu Yang from above. His ice-cold voice sounded like hail crashing down. Bang! In an instant, the scene was one-sided, especially the people of the radiant god cult. The way they looked at the Scion of Light changed again. The original reverence and worship reappeared in their eyes. Humph! The Scion of Light realized and sneered. Everything was fake, and only strength was real. As long as one had the strength, one could do whatever one wanted. Just like Dong Go, who could make people believe his nonsense. Motherfucker, I've been slapping people's faces all day, but today I've been slapped in the face. Chu Yang cursed in his heart. At the same time, he was shocked. The Scion of Light's punch was too fast as a ray of light. When he saw that ray of light, it was already too late. He didn't have any time to react at all. From the perspective of his previous life, the speed of light could be said to be the fastest speed, the limit of speed. The speed of that punch naturally wasn't the speed of light, but it was extremely fast, so fast that he couldn't react. His divine instinct was amazing. Who could do this? The law of light, the speed of light? Chu Yang used a light elemental technique to heal his wounds. A dazzling light burst out from his chest. He thought to himself, light travels in a straight line in a uniform medium. If the medium is not uniform, the direction will change. I wonder if this can be applied to martial arts. He was not able to comprehend the law of light speed in an instant. That was because that punch was too fast, and the time it took for him to perceive it was too short. As a result, he was unable to capture anything. Without any stimulation, even if he had the light soul, he wouldn't be able to immediately comprehend the law of light, the law of light. Dongo, aren't you very talkative? Go on, go on. Let's see if you can talk me to death if you want to. Shua. The Scion of Light moved like a ray of light, punching at Chu Yang once again. Just like before, it was extremely fast. Shua. Chu Yang resisted the urge to use his spatial ability and forcibly dodged, but it was too late. With a bang, the Scion of Light's punch landed on his face. Half of his face was deformed, and half of his teeth were knocked out. The tearing pain almost made him scream. Rumble. He smashed a huge hole in the ground, at least 100 meters deep. Don't worry, you won't die so quickly. The Scion of Light once again hovered above Chu Yang. I order you to immediately regrow your teeth. I'll knock them out 100 times. How arrogant. Chu Yang didn't feel the slightest bit of anger, because he had no reason to be angry. His previous actions were even more arrogant than the Scion of Light. Of course, there was a cause and effect. The Scion of Light was the first to make a move. He wasn't in the wrong. Now, he just wanted to prove whose fist was more powerful. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,